Hey guys. This is part 3 of What If Naruto Was a Seal Master. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start.
We are paid, that's all. We are God.
Chapter 13. Hiruzen loved his surrogate grandson as if he were truly his own. Often that the little blonde was not slipped the Hokage's mind. But there were days when he got a swift reminder that regardless of his condition, Naruto was the child of Minato and Kushina. Only their progeny could cause him such grief without trying, hell, without even being in the village. Jiraiya and Kakashi had both taken their new arrangements well, each man understanding this was the best for the members of Team 7. After a 2-week period of intensive training, the new Team Jiraiya had left the village and would be gone until a month before the Chunin exams. Knowing he'd be gone, Naruto focused his clones on projects that could have an immediate turnaround. Hiruzen was delighted at the idea of using the trees surrounding the village as their power grid. The Shinobi Corps of Engineers absolutely loved the idea and begged Hiruzen to assign Naruto to them. He, of course, declined and watched as some of the smartest ninja in his village pouted and then buried him in forms to begin retrofitting the various buildings within Konoha. The undertaking, dubbed Project L.E.A.F. Light Energy Absorption Field, was underway. The SEAL team and barrier squads would be applying them to the surrounding forests for the next few weeks, but final activation would wait until Naruto came back to check the work. The extra paperwork, while he hated it, Hiruzen could ultimately deal with. It was one of the few ways his shinobi could push back against him to express their displeasure without risking any true, painful, violent, permanent consequence, though the Hokage would drop their budget by 3% in the next fiscal year in retaliation. If it had stopped there, Hiruzen would count his blessings, but it had not. Naruto had even managed to anger Konohamaru's mother, Kanna, though many would know her as Anbu Saru. Kanna, too, had great affection for Naruto but had little time to spend with him or her own son, as her Anbu duties required she be gone frequently. She encouraged the bond between Kono and Naruto, as she knew it helped her son deal with her long absences. Hiruzen was aware of this, so he was initially confused when Kanna came to speak to him in his office. "Why did Naruto teach my baby the first stage of the silent killing technique?" Kanna had asked, and Hiruzen face-bombed. Kanna went at length about how Kono-chan was bragging that his Niken taught him a cool new game of tag and how he could disappear in a crowd now. Her concern wasn't so much what Naruto had started to teach Kono-chan. It was that him practicing it in the middle of the village was making people nervous that a pint-sized assassin kept showing up behind them. Hiruzen promised he'd speak to Kono-chan while also telling Ebisu to keep a better watch of his charge. He was paying the man good money to do so. But those headaches paled in comparison to his volatile student. Tsunade had gotten back into surgery, overcoming a significant hurdle in her recovery, and was genuinely excited to practice medicine again. As she'd returned to her element, she wanted to fully immerse her newest student, but the temporary team switch complicated matters. His in-person hours at the hospital dwindled, and he'd only gotten the bare-bones basics of field surgery, managing to learn the mystic palm and chakra scalpels. As his student glared at him, her foot tapping impatiently, and sending slight tremors through his office, Hiruzen grew tired of her petulance. "If anything, Tsunade-chan, I should be mad at you," Hiruzen bit out. "What the hell did I do? I steal your student and give him to a moronic pervert?" The last Senju question, hands on her hips. "No, you just allowed an S-rank secret to be uncovered under your watch," the Sandame answered. "I was gone by the time Minato was an adult. Do you think I kept up with his preferred attire? Was I a member of some fan club no one told me about? Did I hang his pictures up on my wall and swoon? Also, I didn't pick Naruto's clothes, his little blonde girlfriend did that. You could have suggested a change since then. Maybe sensei, but you have to weigh the potential harm done versus the potential harm avoided." "What are you talking about?" Hiruzen asked in confusion. "Well, sure, Naruto's secret is out or whatever. Maybe IWA tries something. But what you have now is a hospital staff that is treating him like a colleague. They even banter around the water cooler, though he mostly just listens. Because the staff treats him well, the patients are more likely to follow suit. Which means I haven't had to brutally murder anyone or get the hospital walls all messy. See? Cost and benefits, sensei. Cost. And benefits." Tsunade finished, and to Hiruzen's amazement, his lone kunoichi student really thought her argument wasn't one of a psychopath. You can't leverage the harm you would, and could wholly decide not to, do against other risks. That's madness. Madness or not, it's the truth. Now maybe you can tell me how I am supposed to achieve these breakthroughs you expect of me if my collaborator isn't here to aid me. That is why you called me back, remember? He'll be back for the exams. And be busy taking the exams, and after he takes them, then what? Jiraiya likes to go on long training trips. What am I supposed to do then? Well, about that. You know, I'm not getting any younger and I have retired once already. Hiruzen started. Tsunade became mortified and fled the Hokage's office, reasoning if she didn't hear the proposal then it didn't count. Hiruzen wasn't offended by her prompt exit, having planned for it. Sucker! He muttered through his chuckles. He knew either of his students wanted the hat, though one would have to take it. It was time for some new blood to lead the village. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the village, Asuma was diligently training Team 10. Well, one member of Team 10. His lone kunoichi had just recently received her knuckle knives, but she was dedicated to learning to wield them. Asuma was not at all reluctant to admit he'd been wrong in initially denying Ino tutelage in his signature weapon. It seemed she'd matured overnight, and whereas he thought it'd be a pain to have an overeager genin constantly searching his words for deeper meaning, and offing someone's pet because of it, the Yamanaka had proven better than that. Not obsessive, just attentive. Remember, Ino, your build will never be like mine. In and out, constantly changing distance will be your style. Set up your slashes with kicks, change levels and have no set pattern. He instructed as she struck a training dummy. Hi, sensei. She responded before getting back to work. Asuma walked toward his other two students, the sound of thuds a soundtrack to his travel. You two need to get up and get moving, Asuma said. Ino is displaying more effort than both of you put together, and that ends now. Choji, I want you to run 10 laps around the training ground and then up and down one tree. Do that 10 times and then come back. The chubby Akamichi grumbled but did as he was told. If Asuma could credit the air with anything, the boy knew how to follow orders. He then turned to the Nara, the one he'd assumed would be the leader of his team. His faith in that designation was starting to waver a bit. As for you, Shikamaru, we're going to work on your stamina, chakra reserves, and strategic abilities. How? Very simple, you are going to try to catch me with your shadow possession jutsu. Once you do, you must keep me restrained for 3 minutes. For however long you fall short of that goal, that time gets added to your next attempt. Troublesome, the Nara complained. Make it 3.5 minutes, Shikamaru. Asuma amended and shot his student a look daring him to complain some more. The boy smartly did not. He, instead, selected to follow Asuma into the clearing. Soon, Asuma called a start to their game of catch and release as the elite ninja gave the Nara a workout he wouldn't forget. In a nearby training field, another Jounin sensei overlooks her team as they train diligently. Kurenai had already run her team through the day's tracking exercises, drilled them on chakra control. Now was taijutsu sparring and then missions. The red-eyed beauty watched as her most brash student engaged her, once most shy one. It was not going well for the Inuzuka. 2 palms, Hinata exclaimed, Byakugan active and the 2-finger jabs landing swiftly. 4 palms, she said as the strikes came faster, speed enhanced by her natural grace. 8 palms, and Kiba felt each of them. 16 palms, the Hyuga heiress yelled as she dispatched the Nikin user, his body making a disconcerting thud as he hit the ground. Yeah! I'm the princess of Jukin and you better deal with it, Hinata said in triumph. In reward, today's special guest greeted her, and she picked him up and cuddled him without hesitation. Did you see that Chappie-kun? Next time he won't let Akamaru-kun pick on you, will he? Kiba simply groaned while he remained on the ground. He didn't tell Akamaru to do anything to the damn rabbit, but he is a dog. A special, chakra-using, well-trained dog, but still a dog. Kiba would be unwise to dull those instincts, so Akamaru chased the damn critter around for a bit. It was all in good fun, Kiba thought. Clearly, his teammate reached a different conclusion. The pain in his body was subsiding, enough for him to gather his wits once more. He took a breath before speaking. I know you only call out the number of the strikes to be a dick, Hinata. A smile was Hinata's only response. I think that's enough taijutsu for today, but what have we learned? I need to increase my speed and evasion techniques, Shino said. He was not the strongest in close-quarter combat, so being able to create distance was vital for him. Kurenai nodded, figuring her most analytical student would come to that conclusion. We'll work on your countering, Shino, but you're improving, so keep that in mind. What about you two? I could be more aggressive, Hinata said. Yes. It's a fine line, and as you face better opponents, they won't offer obvious gaps. Sometimes you have to create your own offense. I know with your bloodline it may not seem that way, but it's better to get in the habit. However, when you do go on the offensive, you are quite efficient. Efficient, she says, Kiba said in a raised voice. How about cruel and sadistic? Now, Kiba. Sure, Hinata could have stopped her assault at 8 palms, she could have also gone to 32. You have to stop being overly aggressive. Overwhelming force is like any other technique. Without control, it will be easily evaded or turned on you. We'll work on helping you to set things up and get you better at fighting without Akameru, Kurenai explained. Now let's go do some missions. Kiba grumbled but joined the rest of his team as they departed the training grounds for a thrilling day of chores. Lastly, in another training field, Konoha's most youthful beast was joyously engaging his lone kunoichi. Something had changed with Tenten-chan, Guy noticed. It wasn't major or even concerning, but she seemed to be pushing herself a little harder, studying her Fuinjutsu a little more diligently, and even practicing her taijutsu in earnest. She also seemed slightly frazzled, as if some part of her worldview had been torn asunder. The Jounin considered all of this as he dodged the projectiles aimed at him. The taijutsu made it look easy, but he marveled at the improvements of Tenten's signature jutsu, and while supportive and encouraging, Guy would admit to enjoying her reaction when not a single weapon managed to even graze him. Damn it all! Tenten exclaimed, plopping down onto the grass. Yosh! Do not get discouraged, Tenten-chan, your efficiency with that technique improves constantly, Guy said, giving her a thumbs up. His bright smile earning a small one from her in response. I must admit, Tenten, your technique has indeed improved. How did you manage to make the projectiles follow the target? Niji asked. I had some help with the Fuinjutsu. The additional seals allow me to hone on to specific targets. That is most fascinating indeed. Who provided this most youthful help, Tenten-chan? Lee inquired with great enthusiasm. Naruto, the weapon mistress replied. My failure of a cousin's friend? You shouldn't associate with people like him, Tenten. He'll drag you down, Niji cautioned, which annoyed his fellow teammates. You don't know what you're talking about, and since we won't agree, let's just leave it there. Niji was slightly taken aback by Tenten's response. She had never spoken to him like that, and while he respected her, he wouldn't have his beliefs questioned nor suffer disrespect from anyone. His righteous tirade killed in its conception as his other teammate, the fated failure of Team 9, butted in. Naruto-kun is most youthful, Niji. I believe you two could be friends if you could only get past your dislike. He is a bit hip and cool, but neither require an active disdain of him. He just needs to truly bear witness to the flames of youth, Yash. Well said, Lee. And since you have so much energy, time for a team spar. All of you against me. Let's get to it, Guy ordered, adopting his nice guy pose. Niji's annoyance with his teammates was quickly put on the back burner. Fighting with his sensei was never easy and required his full attention. Kabuto sat his cargo down roughly, hoping to cause every bit of discomfort he could manage. If he had his choice, he'd have drugged the boy down to his lab and begun experimentations immediately, if for no other reason than the frustration and aggravation he'd caused the long-time spy. His master's laughter only agitated him further, but he knew never to glare at Orochimaru-sama. Kukuku, no need to be so inconsiderate to our new friend, Kabuto-kun. He is my honored guest and will be treated as such, Orochimaru warned, taking great delight in Kabuto's appearance. His clothes signed, cut, and dirty. It was clear his second-in-command had experienced a tougher fight than he'd initially anticipated, and it was further proof the snake Sannin was correct in his estimation. Now, take that gag off and undo those restraints. He wouldn't be foolish enough to attack me. Right, Naruto-kun? Kabuto did as he was told, expecting the blonde to offer some manner of resistance, but was surprised when that did not happen. The genin simply rubbed his wrists to alleviate some of the soreness of having been tied up, but said nothing and made no attempt to flee. It was almost as if he didn't care who was sitting at the table across from him. The Odo medic adjusted his glasses, a tell of his current emotional state. Naruto surveyed the room. There was one visible exit to his left, and he was currently separated from the Sannin by a long dining room table. The room was well lit. Lights hung above and candles decorated the stone walls. Kabuto-kun, please go retrieve dinner, Orochimaru requested. Hi. The Silverette answered and complied. Now we may be introduced properly. Hello, Naruto-kun. I am Orochimaru. Thank you for gracing me with your presence. Naruto looked at the man, his Aji-san's traitorous student. He wasn't a guest as he was kidnapped, but it was clear the man wanted to play at this being a social call. He needed to prolong things, so the Uzumaki decided to indulge. Thank you for your invitation. You are quite welcome. Now I am sure you are curious as to why I had Kabuto-kun and the Sound Fort provide such a forceful invite, yes? Naruto nodded. That is a bit of a story. See, when Kabuto-kun informed me that the village was undergoing some serious overhauls in security, and there was a new Fuinjutsu-enabled device all the senior ninja were receiving, I was of course curious. Did Jiraiya have a late-period burst of genius, or was there a new Fuinjutsu user on the scene? Orochimaru stopped as Kabuto returned. It was to my utter surprise that Kabuto-kun failed to procure one of those devices. He couldn't even break into the manufacturer's facility. With the dragnet in the village and everything else, he had to return home empty-handed. Chastened and humiliated in his defeat. It was quite shameful. Even more so that he had no idea who this potential Seal Master could be. Orochimaru mocked. The medic sat the bowl of tonkatsu ramen in front of Naruto, trying his best not to shatter the bowl. Orochimaru merely smiled at his subordinate's anger. Naruto took up his porcelain spoon, letting a small amount of the ramen broth flow into it. Before taking the warm liquid into his mouth, the Uzumaki activated a minor medical ninjutsu. It allowed for the detection of poisons via the tongue. He detected none. With his free hand, he picked up his chopsticks and began eating in earnest. I do hope you enjoy. I recall ramen being a favorite dish of your parents, Orochimaru observed. The Uzumaki hummed. It was clear the Sannin was prodding him to see if he knew about his parents, and if the information could be a way to manipulate him. The ramen is quite good, the genin offered. Orochimaru laughed. The boy was cold as ice. Now, as I was saying, I'm now presented with this mystery and had little to go on. So frustrating, not to know. But luckily a foolish toad brought me all I needed, Orochimaru said, incredibly pleased with himself. He took up a remote and a multi-panel screen turned on, showing various snippets of Team Jiraiya's raid on the Snake Sannin's base. Most of the footage was of Naruto. To be able to apply seals via chakra alone is a master-level ability, and here you do it with several different arrays. My poor ninja, they didn't know what to do. They were not looking for the Sannin nor his minions when they entered the base. A nearby town had been experiencing a rash of abductions and Jiraiya was tasked with figuring it out. The infiltration had gone well, but one of the abductees triggered an alarm as they were leaving, forcing the team to fight their way out. Next, we see you erecting a barrier to trap some more of my men, leaving them to the designs of that inked beast. And lastly, we have you using that special shuriken to behead one of my prized experiments. The half-stone, berserker beast was not easily put down, beating Haku, Sai and he. It was fast and durable. It was only some quick thinking in Naruto's emitter disc that allowed them to win, the trio hitting the floor while the monster stood upright not expecting a thing. That level of talent, with your looks. It didn't take long for Kabuto to remember a blonde-haired, blue-eyed boy named Uzumaki Naruto. Hidden away on Sasuke-kun's team. Sarutobi-sensei always was disgustingly clever like that. Put you on a team with the last Uchiha and no one would even take a second glance. I guess I'm fortunate that such things don't escape my notice. Naruto accepted that this man clearly liked to hear himself talk. It was good, he didn't have to try to banter or match wits with him. The traitor would fill the space without any prompting. That would work out well. It is little known, but I originally wanted Minato to be my apprentice. If Orochimaru was expecting a reaction, he didn't get one, which seemed to amuse him. I saw the same talent that Jiraiya, but I saw something even more impressive and rare. Do you know what that is, Naruto-kun? No. Naruto answered, and the Sannin could not be faulted for thinking the Uzumaki was referring to him. But he wasn't. As the Sannin was speaking, his team had come into range of his communicator seal. Hours earlier, Jiraiya arrived to a battlefield. His team were not at the inn he booked, and the surrounding areas looked like a fierce battle had occurred. There were slashes in the trees, overturned earth, scorch marks, and the like. He approached his team, his godson administering aid to Sai and Haku. Clearly, they had been injured, and that tightened the Toad Sage's chest. He'd gone to meet a contact. He really couldn't bring the kids along, but during that time they'd been set upon. Naruto, what happened? Oto. One was Kabuto Yakushi, he used to work in the hospital. He was much better than a genin. The others referred to themselves as the Sound Four. They had curse marks and overwhelmed us. Haku took an arrow to the abdomen, but her flak jacket prevented it from piercing too deeply. It nearly broke a rib on impact. Sai had a concussion. I've treated it along with his dislocated shoulder. Is there anything else? Yes, we're both clones. Their mission was to take the original. What? Jiraiya yelled before calming down. I can just reverse summon him, so not ideal but not a catastrophe. The boss doesn't think you should do that. And why not? They didn't want him dead, which means they are taking him back to some kind of base. The locator seal is active and the communicator seal will be once you're in range. This is a chance for more intel and to possibly confirm what you suspect. The clone argued. Jiraiya cursed himself for being so unthinking. Making their way through that other base, he said the work was likely the product of Orochimaru, more to himself, and in disgust, but his team heard him. He was right. If they could get there in time, then it would be confirmation that Oto had some tie to Orochimaru and resources could be dedicated to uprooting the mysterious village. How much longer until they are operational? 20 minutes at the most. Jiraiya grunted in approval and waited for what felt like the longest 20 minutes of his life. The clones dispelled, sending back the relevant information to the original, and what was left of Team Jiraiya departed swiftly, the two younger shinobi pushing themselves to keep up with the legendary ninja. The jovial Jiraiya they had grown accustomed to was gone. It was clear, when he arrived there was going to be a reckoning. As they raced toward Naruto's location, Haku was the first to realize the communicator seal had come online. She cursed herself for her weakness, in her failure to protect her friend. She'd hesitated when she had to opening to kill, and it cost her. The bitter taste of regret lingered on her tongue, and she promised herself she'd never allow her weak heart to endanger Naruto, or anyone else, again. Naruto-kun, are you hurt? No. We're 7 minutes out, just hold on. The last known Yuki vowed as she continued to pace, prepared to do anything to rescue her friend. 7 minutes, the Uzumaki thought. It wasn't long, but it'd have to do. He had a mission to complete, and he'd listened to the weird snake man talk long enough. Forming the ram sign, a seal started to glow on Kabuto's arm, something that was not missed by Orochimaru. Nor did he miss that the seal seemed to be traveling up his subordinate's arm toward his body. Removing the hidden kunai he kept in his sleeve, Orochimaru cut Kabuto's arm off and formed an Earth-style mud wall. The construct protected them from the predicted explosion. When the smoke cleared and the ringing in his ears subsided, Orochimaru realized his guest had departed. He turned to Kabuto, on the ground and writhing in pain. He could replace the boy's arm, so he hadn't lost all value. Not that he'd be that upset if Kabuto had been killed. If he could be duped by a genin, which he almost had been, then he wasn't the caliber of ninja the Sannin needed anyway. He went to the door and was shocked when he attempted to open it. He laughed at being trapped in the room, curious to see what Naruto-kun was going to do. Just after Naruto vacated the dining room, he placed a timed barrier seal on the door. It wasn't extremely complex, but it would do. He summoned his black flak jacket and zipped it up, having removed it before Kabuto finally captured him. He didn't have much time, but he'd allow his Aji-san's words to guide him. If you are ever in an enemy's territory, remove all traces of mercy and doubt. Do not expect to be shown any, so show none in kind. The raid of the first Oto base had been Naruto's first kills. He wasn't sure how he felt about it. It gave him no great thrill, but didn't fill him with sadness either. He hadn't had a lot of time to figure it out, and that wasn't about to change. He activated his projection seal, having managed to tag each of the Sound Four. If all went to plan, each would die tonight. The enemy will often see their numbers as a strength, but when caught off guard, when truly surprised, numbers are a weakness. People can be irrational. The larger the group, the greater the effect. Cause maximum damage, so the greatest amount of chaos while you accomplish your real mission. He could hear several people approaching him from either side of the corridor, all racing toward the dining room's entrance. Naruto removed 2 emitter discs from his flak jacket and tossed them in opposite directions. Holding the tiger seal, the discs exploded. At first he heard screams and then silence. The Uzumaki created 10 clones. They would go in the opposite direction to sow discord and secure his exit. As he ran down the hallway, he saw how effective his explosion was, but resolved not to dwell on it. He needed to focus. The base was a labyrinth of long hallways and multiple underground levels. He couldn't be too rash, but he had to be swift. The first target was approaching fast, and in their haste, Naruto could hear multiple hastily planted a trap and then merged with his surroundings. "Hurry, you idiots! We need to get to Orochimaru-sama now!" Sakan yelled. He and the 6 others continued down the hallway, the strongest of the sound for bringing up the rear. None of the ninja realized they triggered a seal but were simply blinded and deafened by a flash bang. Naruto took advantage of his opening, descending from the stone ceiling, slapping a chakra restriction seal on Sakan and stabbing him in the brain. He knew the man was actually 2 people, but without chakra they would share one fate. One was down. Naruto looked to the others. He performed 4 hand signs and placed his right palm on the ground. A seal emerged and surrounded the downed ninja, and Naruto departed. He still had 5 minutes left. The ninja were still disorganized, and it allowed Naruto to make it to the next level. Sticking to the ceiling, Naruto waited for his next target. It was the large one, the one that gave Sai his concussion. The Uzumaki dropped down, planning a quick slash like the one before, and felt his blades sink into flesh. "Ugh!" the large man said, now a kunai stabbed into his hand. He retaliated with a fierce punch, sending Naruto through the door of an adjacent room. Jirobo grunted as he removed the blade, following the boy into the room, only to be blown back by the explosion of an emitter disc. Pressured for time, it was underpowered, but it was enough to temporarily blind the behemoth. On pure instinct, Jirobo reached out his hands and caught the impending dual stabs aimed for his neck. Blinded and enraged, he gripped Naruto's wrists and slammed the smaller boy into the wall. Spider cracks formed due to the force. Unrelenting, the sound 4 man went for a headbutt, finding a pair of knees instead of his intended target, consequently breaking his nose. As Jirobo reared back, Naruto took advantage by kicking the Oto elite in the throat. Startled, he released his grip and was rewarded with a kunai in each of his lungs. The titanesque male dropped to the ground. Naruto tossed one more kunai to his head to make sure his target wouldn't arise again. He'd made that mistake with Kabuto, and he wouldn't make it again. Reactivating his projection seal, Naruto saw his last 2 targets were far from each other, one on the lowest level and the other near the stairwell he'd recently navigated. He had just under 3 minutes, no time to waste. Running through the halls, he was soon presented with a squad of ninja. It appeared they were getting their wits about him, his distractions wearing off. The tunic-wearing ninjas seemed unsurprised to find him, and ready to fight. Any half-trained shinobi force will eventually regroup and mount a counterattack. It will be harder to navigate their terrain, but nothing is hopeless. Certain people draw others to them, giving their comrades strength and confidence. Crush those individuals and you crush morale. Then neutralize all before you. Naruto took a good look at the squad before him. All adults, mostly about average size except for one. He was closer to Hatake-sensei's height, and the other 3 were surrounding him. He also saw the other 3 subtly looking at man as if waiting to follow his lead. His back was sore and his ribs ached. He was also getting impatient. He couldn't waste time with these individuals, but he knew if he got careless he'd fail and possibly die. Naruto retrieved 2 saban from a special pouch on his jacket and took a defensive stance. The larger man laughed, as if in disbelief. "Are you the one causing this ruckus? Heard you killed Sakan. Good, I always hated that bastard. Why don't you come along back to Orochimaru-sama before the boys and I hurt ya?" "No. A tough guy, yeah? Fine. I'll have to show you what being tough really is, and then Orochimaru-sama will reward me." The man dashed toward Naruto after that. His speed was moderate, and his stance was all wrong for fighting a much smaller opponent. Once he reached Naruto, he found the 2 saban in a knee each. Stunned from the pain, he didn't block the dropkick delivered by the kidnapped genin. The other 3 showed the depths of their disbelief that this child had managed. It was a mistake. Their other mistake was going toward their down leader, instead of attacking Naruto, but they wouldn't get the chance to amend it. One flare of chakra later and the 2 saban exploded, taking out the entire squad. Ignoring the gore and smell of burnt flesh, Naruto charged through the door. Pain soon followed. Immense pain and the feeling of being forcefully lifted from his feet and again tossed through a door. From his back, the Uzumaki looked down to see a golden arrow penetrating his protective wear. He could feel the cracks in his ribs as breathing became more difficult. He could also feel the injury slowly healing, but he had no time to wait for completion. Naruto ran through the doorway again, this time leaping over the railing, down to the next floor, narrowly avoiding being impaled by another arrow. As he grabbed onto the metal frame, he grunted in discomfort. "This is as far as you go, Blondie," Kidomaru said, hanging from a web, aiming his bow for Naruto. Not having a moment to breathe, Kidomaru continued his game of cat and mouse, rapidly shooting arrows at Naruto's position and the Uzumaki barely dodging them. This man was a target, but he had the high ground and other advantages. No matter how he moved, the Spider Boy was simply prepared to attack and leave no time for a counter. Naruto accepted he didn't have the time to see to him personally. The only benefit of being under constant assault is that he was nearing the bottom level. Letting go of his current position, Naruto retrieved 3 pellets and threw them upward. Soon, the stairwell was engulfed in smoke and Kidomaru pulled himself up so as to not be ambushed. The 6-armed ninja's instinct was correct as a series of wind-style air bullets rocketed upward. He evaded them but frowned as the smoke was still rising and his vision was blocked. The sound 4 Archer heard more than saw items cutting through the smoke. He had just enough time to escape the immediate blast radius, but still suffered some damage. When the smoke finally cleared, Kidomaru saw roughly a dozen copies of the little bastard he'd abducted earlier. He was already tired from the previous fight but realized this kid was intent on trying to kill him. He released the first level of his cursed mark and got ready for round 2. The original landed silently and made his way toward his final target. He was nearing the end of his time limit, having to forego stealth for speed. Naruto darted past the prison cells, the detainees too beaten and terrorized to give away his position. Most didn't even bother to look up. He stalked the last of Orochimaru's bodyguard and would not have needed his seal to find her. The kunoichi was busy berating some of prisoners, using a host of foul language and insults. Naruto took a calming breath, recalling another piece of advice from his Aji-san. Never be afraid to go at someone's strength. Shinobi can be prideful about our skills. If you go at a specialist with a weak iteration of their skill, they may be too busy boasting to realize the opening they left you. Take full advantage of it. Naruto recalled the girl used auditory genjutsu but wasn't much for direct combat. He didn't know many proper genjutsu, but he did have one that would fit the situation. A quick series of hand seals and Naruto cast the demonic art, Hell Viewing Jutsu. Tayuya knew immediately she was under a genjutsu and tore through it with little effort. As she turned to berate the idiot that would dare attempt such a useless technique on her, a shin met the soft cartilage of her nose, breaking it easily. As Naruto approached the downed kunoichi, he heard a vehement shake of cell doors. Sensing it was a warning, Naruto ducked to all fours, the kick aimed for his head sailing over him. But he didn't have enough time to avoid the follow-up kick to his injured ribs. The blow, strong and fast, sent the Uzumaki back several feet. So, this is the trash that interests Orochimaru-sama? Naruto heard a voice ask. He looked up and saw it was an older, white-haired teen with loose-fitting clothes. The kick hurt, undoing any progress his regenerative abilities had accomplished. Yeah. Tayuya started, pinching her nose. That's the fucker. Good, you leave and I'll handle it from here, Kimimaro ordered. The normally vulgar girl did as she was told and departed further away. The Uzumaki tossed the kunai toward the girl, but Kimimaro caught it and tossed it to the side. Naruto felt frustration rise within him. He barely had a minute and a half left, and he had to get through this person to finish his mission. Kimimaro attacked without warning. With his injuries, Naruto was forced to be more defensive and evasive in this fight, utilizing the moves Shizen taught him. He was dodging most of the older boy's blows, but still getting clipped occasionally. The pair looked caught in a dance of death, the flourishes of agility eschewing the deadly intent. Naruto could admit the person he was fighting was better than him, but he wasn't deterred. He remained patient, learning his enemy's pattern and timing. It wasn't long before he found his opening. Kimimaro attempted a roundhouse and Naruto slipped under it, slyly placing a paper bomb on Kimimaro's leg. Naruto shunshined away and activated the note. He heard a grunt of pain but saw none of the blood he'd assumed would accompany his move. When the smoke cleared, he saw the Oto ninja looking mostly unharmed, save for his burned clothing. His leg, encased in a thick armor of what appeared to be bone, and holding a sword of the same material. It seems it was wrong of me to call you trash. I am Kagaya Kimimaro and will present your broken body to my lord. Naruto said nothing in response but unsealed his staff. Giving it a twirl, he charged toward the now named Kagaya. Back in the stairwell, Kidomaru was breathing heavily. The clones pushed him to the point of needing the second level of his cursed mark. The surroundings were wrecked, signs of multiple explosions and blunt force damage could be seen about. He was just glad he finally got all of them. He needed to get his burns looked at and get some rest, putting an end to this. Lulled into a false sense of security, he reacted too slowly when a final clone descended from above. Trying to make up for being caught unaware, he created a short arrow. Palming it, the archer thrust it behind him. He got the clone, but not before it had completed its mission. Kidamaru instantly felt the backlash of the seal that had been placed on him. A seal that would bind his cursed mark and force it to recede. The pain and the destabilization of his chakra network caused the arachnid-themed boy to lose his grip. Falling, he could do nothing to save himself as unconsciousness was setting upon him. Not able to channel chakra into his body, Kidamaru hit the ground from a several stories fall, breaking his back, but not even the force of his impact nor the agony it elicited could wake the boy. Kimimaro looked at the boy he'd been exchanging blows with. He'd been tempted to activate his cursed mark but knew it'd hasten his decline. He felt he couldn't give this boy a single opening or the blonde would put full effort into ending him. He could only die when Orochimaru-sama gave him permission. Kimimaro wondered how the boy would fight unhampered, clearly holding back as to not harm the prisoners and due to injuries sustained in previous exchanges. But that could wait. The boy had an unknown opening and the Kaguya planned to take advantage of it to end this fight. He really could not prolong it without deleterious effects. He charged, performing several fast-paced thrusts at the Konoha genin. Naruto deflected the attacks one after another, as Kimimaro predicted he would, but after his first volley the boy lowered his staff. Channeling chakra into his legs, the leader of Orochimaru's elite guard rushed him, stabbing Naruto in the left shoulder. It was as he designed it. However, Kimimaro could take no pleasure in his assumed victory. During his dash, Naruto was engaging a plan of his own. Having created a false opening for the Kaguya, Naruto resealed his staff and took the blow to his shoulder. He only needed one hand anyway. Grinding. Flesh grinding. His very muscles being pulverized and begging to give way to a superior force. There are very few people who have experienced the Rasengan and lived. Kimimaro would be added to that list, ironically having Jiraiya to thank for saving his life, as just as Naruto was about to pierce his torso with the peak of shape manipulation, the Toad Sage reverse summoned him. With little ceremony, the Uzumaki ripped out the bone sword from his shoulder. He found himself inside a hug, feeling the familiar softness of Haku's bust. Normally, he greatly appreciated Haku's hugs, but now he felt as if he didn't deserve it. He'd failed. He was to neutralize those that had harmed his friends, and he'd failed. Before he could give voice to any of his thoughts, he heard a voice he thought he'd be free of for some time. He knew his barrier wouldn't last long, but hoped the weird, snake man would attend to his forces. Jiraiya stood in front of his team, ready to strike should Orochimaru make an untoward move. Kukuku, why Naruto-kun, you sure caused a mess. You've gone too far this time, Orochimaru. Jiraiya yelled, but the snake Sannin's eyes didn't leave Naruto. We can fight now, Jiraiya, but I have the superior numbers and no problem killing the kiddies. I'd love to get that Yuki on my table. We'd have a lot of fun. I'd have a lot of fun. You'd scream yourself hoarse and beg me to stop. Jiraiya frowned. It really wouldn't be safe for him to go all out with his team here, and going all out was the only way he'd kill his former teammate. They'd have to retreat for now, even though everything inside of him wanted to kill that man and all who dared to follow him. Let's go, Jiraiya ordered. Oh, before you do, I never got to give you my answer, Naruto-kun. The reason I wanted Minato-kun as a student? He was a natural-born killer. Just like me, Orochimaru said and broke out into a face-splitting smile. And just like you. Chapter 14. Orochimaru gazed upon his downed elites. 2 of his sound 4 were confirmed dead. Kidamaru managed to hang on, but the long-range fighter sustained a broken back and legs. Worse yet, in his few conscious moments, when prompted, he could not activate his cursed mark. The spider-esque shinobi confessed he couldn't even feel it to draw upon. Kimimaro was in critical but stable condition. Orochimaru didn't know whether to count the Kaguya as lucky or not. Sure, he lived, but the damage done by what, as he described it, could only be the Rasengan shortened his already dwindling life, and he'd be in great pain for the remainder. Kabuto, by comparison, was better off. The arm he lost could be replaced and would in short order. That the medical ninja was clearly suppressing rage at having been maimed, and more importantly, nearly killed by a child, amused the snake Sannin. He was aware that Kabuto would try to kill the Uzumaki at his earliest opportunity. If he managed it, the Akatsuki would bring down the full force of their wrath. Orochimaru was a genius, but he knew he couldn't defeat the entirety of the Akatsuki. Still, he held no concerns for Kabuto's attempt. If his assumptions about Naruto were correct, the Uzumaki had seen enough of Kabuto's fighting style and techniques to get an accurate measure of him. Kabuto didn't currently have anything in his arsenal that would alter that conclusion. In short, Kabuto had likely been figured out by the boy. He may be faster and more experienced, but it wouldn't matter. If Kabuto tried to strike at Naruto, he'd lose his life in the process, and if his second wasn't perceptive enough to realize that, then he'd come to the end of his usefulness anyway. All in all, the murdering and crippling of his elites, the loss of dozens more, and having to abandon a base were small sacrifices. If Naruto had even half of his father's potential, and his facility with seals would put the estimation well above that, he'd be a once-in-a-generation talent. What did displease him was what the surveillance footage showed. The chibi assassin hadn't shown one sign he was enjoying himself. It was all business. While admirable to a degree, it simply wouldn't do for his student. He would teach the Uzumaki how to have fun while he worked, to extract every ounce of pleasure from his deeds. Life was too short to not love what you did. But Naruto would learn. "You seem happy, Orochimaru-sama," Guren said, having just entered the medical wing. "More excited than anything, Guren-chan. I believe I have stumbled upon something interesting." "The boy?" "Yes, indeed. Naruto-kun seems to have the talent and inclinations of his father, along with something else truly magnificent." "What is that? A bloodline? Will he be your next host?" she asked, managing to repress much of the bitterness in her voice, but Orochimaru heard it all the same. "No, nothing like that, and he couldn't be my new host even if I wanted him to. First, he knows how to completely seal up the cursed marks, so I'd be wasting my time even trying. Secondly, I suspect he is the Jinchuuriki of the Kyuubi." Guren's eyes went wide for the briefest of moments before she regained her composure. "Is that how he was able to defeat them?" she asked. "Kukuku, no. I don't know if he can use the Kyuubi's chakra, but it was clear he didn't need to. There is a lot of potential in him. The very prospect makes me giddy. How shall I be of use? I want you to back-channel with our remaining assets in Konoha. Get all the information you can on Naruto-kun. Jiraiya knows of my connection with Oto, so some things will need to change, but the invasion will still commence." "Hi," Guren said as she bowed and departed. The pieces on the board hadn't changed, but the game had. The Snake Sannin just had to get them all lined up before the game was afoot. Finally, things were getting interesting. A purple-haired, long-term ANBU kneeled in front of her Hokage. The Wizen leader was making quick work of her report. When Jiraiya submitted the details of Naruto's kidnapping, Hiruzen wasted no time, ordering a full platoon of ANBU to the location. He knew his wayward student would have likely departed, but if there was even the slim possibility he would be there, he wanted his best on the scene. By the time the elite operatives arrived, the base had been cleared. The forensic specialists, of which Kat was one, swept through the place anyway, paying special focus to any of Naruto's leftover Fuinjutsu. The boy had been detailed about his various seals and traps, which was fortunate as he saved the ANBU from tripping any. The damage inflicted should not have been possible by a rookie genin, and it reflected in her report's conclusion. The Sandaime read speedily, pride and worry warring within him. Kat's description of Naruto's impromptu mission adding color to Naruto-kun's dry synopsis. As described by genin Uzumaki, ANBU squad found several examples of his motion-activated explosions. Trapping shows, while genin Uzumaki may not fully understand the subjective elements of emotions, he understands as sensory inputs that elicit predictable reactions. Seals placed on incapacitated Oto Nin were linked. If someone went to aid a downed comrade, the seal would trigger multiple simultaneous explosions. Genin Uzumaki also showed great practicality in his seal design and placement. Some traps created to take advantage of basic shinobi formations. Pressure seals triggered by a lead ninja would take out members behind, without the lead knowing, leaving the lone shinobi confident in numbers that were no longer present. It is my conclusion that genin Uzumaki, by attempting to carry out a 5-target assassination mission behind enemy lines, with 2 confirmed kills and 2 possible to likely, as well as providing information on Nuke Nin Orochimaru, should be promoted to Chunin and drafted into the ANBU Black Ops. "No," the Sandaime said. "There is safety in anonymity. You utilized this logic for most of his life, Hokage-sama." Kat responded, neutrally, but Hiruzen felt the acidity of her words. An anonymous orphan and an ANBU are hardly the same. Rise, Kat, her leader ordered, and she obeyed. ANBU would not aid in his development. ANBU would make him strong just like it did for Kakashi. Like me. Even Itachi. We don't need another Itachi, the Hokage observed. Naruto-kun wouldn't be like Itachi. Their psychology is fundamentally different, and Naruto-kun would never turn on Konoha unless you ordered him to. Kat countered. Hiruzen felt pained at how close to the truth Kat unknowingly was about Itachi. Naruto-kun will never be an ANBU as long as I draw breath. Then send him to cryptanalysis or the engineering divisions. Create a real Fuinjutsu division, place the barrier core under it, and promote him to special jounin, Kat argued. She was growing frustrated. The Sandaime was one of, if not the smartest man in the village. Clearly he could see Naruto was attracting attention that outstripped his development. It would only get worse, and the blonde wasn't prepared. I know you worry about him and you honor Kushina, but Naruto-kun must be allowed to grow. I believe he is something special and will do great things. Just like Minato left his mark on a student, Kushina had as well. Mostly informal, her pregnancy delaying things, but Kushina had mentored the young ANBU Kunoichi, and Kat admired the woman. But like Kakashi, she simply wasn't a viable option for adoption, as her work with the Black Ops organization was too vital. He has to be alive to achieve those goals, Kat stated. Yes, he must. But he must also be tested. Fate and foolish old men have not been kind to Naruto-kun. And as much as it pains me to say it, Orochimaru will simply be one of many challenges he will endure in the future. He has no choice but to be strong. Better than even his father, and at a much earlier age. He will be at his best in the light, reaching only a fraction of his true potential as an ANBU. That's not a reasonable expectation, Hokage-sama. Minato-sama was considered more than a genius dash, I know. Many saw him as the perfect shinobi, but he wasn't. He was just a man. Indescribably talented but not perfect. He can be surpassed, and I believe he thought Naruto-kun would be the one to do so. Sandaime-sama, that is even more reason to draft him. He'll get dedicated training and experience. Kakashi, Jiraiya and Tsunade do what they can, but all have to split focus to other duties or charges. My decision on this is final, Kat. Naruto-kun was meant for the light, not the darkness, and if you've spoken to Tenzo, then you know he is building bonds with many. He's not that lonely, little boy you used to watch play in the forest. Besides, Naruto-kun doesn't need Kat, but I bet Yuga would be a fine addition in his life. But... Did you really think I allowed Kakashi-kun to be his sensei, bring Jiraiya back but deny you? I honestly assumed I wouldn't have to tell you. He knows about his parents, so you can introduce yourself. Thank you, Hokage-sama. Sai Haku, secure the perimeter, Jiraiya ordered. The small house they were set to enter was unassuming, but he wouldn't allow himself to be overly lax again. The two departed without a word. He saw his other student making the cross-shaped hand sign, and Jiraiya swatted his hands apart. What do you think you're doing, Naruto? Creating clones to add security seals to the house, he answered. Team Medic doesn't do that. Team Medic treats injuries. And what are you? Experiencing a great deal of irritation caused by you, Naruto replied neutrally. The Team Medic, yes you are. Jiraiya spoke, answering his own question and ignoring his godson. He knew he was being hard on the boy, but what Naruto did was stupid. Jiraiya didn't care if it worked out. It was an unnecessary risk. That he had to admonish Naruto for doing something stupid in a similar way to how he once admonished Minato didn't help things. He lost him way too soon, and he would not lose Naruto. But the Uzumaki was hard-headed, insistent he took the correct course of action. Jiraiya needed him to understand it wasn't okay to deceive his team leader, even for a just cause. And revenge, which is what Jiraiya would chalk this up to, would never be just. The Sanni knocked on the door, and immediately heard scurrying about. What's the password? He heard a Kunoichi timidly ask. Jiraiya rolled his eyes, as there were a lot of passwords, and how you knew which one to give was set up by the first person speaking. They start the phrase, you end it. The password is I'm Jiraiya of the Sanni. Now open the door, Missy. And no. Jiraiya face-bombed. He could hear how rattled the girl was just by her voice. Still, had she not been trained on how to verify support? He wondered what Kakashi was teaching his team. Sakura-san, I offered to have sex with you once we reach 16. You did not seem receptive to the offer. The door opened and Naruto was ensconced in a hug. Without any diagnostic jutsu, he could tell his teammate was nearing exhaustion and needed rest. Whatever she could relay wouldn't be credible, so Naruto raised a green glowing hand to her temple. She instantly went slack in his arms and he executed a bridal carry as they entered the cabin like home. As they entered, they saw Kakashi on the couch palming a kunai but looking otherwise unbothered. "Oh, Naruto-kun, you sly devil." Naruto looked at his sensei and then at his godfather, not understanding the implication. Kakashi smiled, figuring Naruto wouldn't get it. "Spare room is in the back. Lay her down and then check on Sasuke and Lee, okay?" Naruto nodded and walked off. "As relieved as I am to see you, Jiraiya-sama, you seem stressed." Jiraiya scoffed. "I'm beyond stressed, Kakashi. I am in a storm of shit of which there is no safe passage nor dry land. We raided one of Orochimaru's bases. It was our first mission. The snake responds by having his elite bodyguards attack my team and snatch Naruto while I was with a contact." Jiraiya rubbed at his temple, trying to will away his headache. Had he paid attention, he'd have noticed Kakashi visibly tense. Only having seen his student reassured him the boy was okay. And if that wasn't bad enough, Kushina's brat decides that each of the ninja involved in his abduction had to die. Not for kidnapping him, he by all appearances doesn't even give a shit. No, it's because they hurt Sai and Haku in the attempt. So, what does he do? He goes to fucking war by himself in a base where Orochimaru was in attendance. And he almost pulled it off. He even managed to beat a Kaguya. By the time I got there, it looked like a team of demolition experts had gone crazy. Sensei and Hein know he was snatched. No, Orochimaru has interest in him. Sensei sent Enma to inform me of his displeasure. Katsuya tells me Tsunade is creating a new technique just for me. Hell, I can't even reprimand the kid too harshly without Haku wanting to use my nutsack for target practice. She's been his shadow since we got him back. This has just been a mess." Jiraiya finished and finally looked at Kakashi. He did not like what he was seeing. "I know you were long time in BU and you masks get all turned around, but do not, under any circumstances, praise him for what he did, Kakashi. I don't want to encourage this kind of behavior, not misleading me nor in revenge-seeking." Kakashi didn't bother to fight the pride he was feeling and resolved to get the full report once he returned to the village. "I won't, but I won't admonish him either, not without all the information." "Sure, whatever," the Sannin replied. "Now, what happened to you?" "Oh, you know? Came to escort the client to the capital to get her away from local crime lord. Residents poisoned me and attempted to do the same to the genin out of fear of what would happen if crime lord doesn't get what he wants. Crime lord's muscle, made of multiple missing or former ninja attack, and with me poisoned we sustained more damage than we would otherwise while losing the client." "Okay, give me everything you know and I'll complete the mission." "With the rest of your team?" "No. My bastard of a former teammate pissed me off and I need to cut loose. Can't do that with the kids around. Besides, Haku and Sai will be more than enough to guard this place. Naruto is remanded to non-combat duties unless absolutely necessary." "You sure you want to provoke him like this? As you say, he is Kushina's child and you remember she always got even." "Always," the copy ninja stressed. "Pfft, I'm a Sannin, what can that brat do to me? He bought your publisher, remember? Well, he can't buy them a second time. I'll be fine." Kakashi didn't bother to respond further, as he reasoned Jiraiya would simply have to learn the hard way. "Naruto-kun?" Lee asked in surprise as his newest friend walked into the bedroom. Both he and Sasuke were on bedrolls. "Is Sakura-chan alright?" the taijutsu specialist asked in concern. Sasuke remained quiet, only watching his occasional teammate lie Sakura down on her own bedroll. "She is fine, Lee-san," Naruto said once he'd gotten Sakura down. "She just needed some rest. She'll wake up in a few hours." Naruto created a shadow clone and sent it to Lee as he moved to and kneeled next to Sasuke. The original and the clone began their diagnostic jutsu and Naruto noticed the gash on Sasuke's side. It was deep but bandaged well, so as long as Sasuke didn't make any sudden moves he'd have been fine. He also noticed high levels of dopamine and norepinephrine. There were signs of fatigue and high blood pressure as well. "Sasuke-san, can you tell me what happened?" "We got ambushed. Handled the initial wave, but there were a few missing nin that overwhelmed us. I activated my Sharingan in time to save Sakura from getting killed. Though, who knows what state we'd be in if our team medic was with us from the start," Sasuke said bitterly. He wasn't really mad at Naruto or Sakura for that matter. It did scare him how close he came to dying, to never fulfilling his life's ambition. Reasonable, Naruto replied, taking no offense. He continued his checkup, now focusing on Sasuke's newly evolved eyes. Your Sharingan, what do you experience when you activate it? How did you activate it? I don't know, we were getting overwhelmed and they just activated. Suddenly, everything seemed slower and I could react better to it. It's why I was able to get to Sakura. Tachypsychia, trauma-induced, Naruto thought and would make note of it in his medical report. Sasuke-san, I would recommend you not activating your Sharingan again before undergoing a full workup once you've returned to the village. The Uchiha wasn't happy about that but didn't protest, still tired and sore from the attack. The clone was attending to Lee and noticing a high degree of muscle strain and tears. The youthful beast explained the 8 inner gates while he regaled him of his fierce battle. It was very vivid and the clone nodded in appreciation of Lee's storytelling ability. The clone repaired the most serious of the damage, making sure Lee could be operational should the need arise, but letting the body finish healing naturally was generally preferable. He'd only need a day or 2 of rest, and he'd be fine. Naruto returned to the front room to render treatment to Kakashi. The boy worked in silence, only humming when he discovered an anomaly. Nothing life-threatening but something he'd request a more experienced medic look over in his report. Kakashi watched Chibi, debating whether he should ignore Jiraiya's request and praise his favorite student for doing something cool. He doubted Sasuke nor Sakura would do anything half as cool until they were Chunin. So, Jiraiya-sama tells me you found yourself in a bit of trouble, Kakashi observed dryly. Yes, Naruto responded as he was writing his report. And how do you feel about everything? Displeased. I failed to neutralize all of my desired targets. Understandable, but not every mission can be a success. How about your team? How are Sai and Haku? Sai has voiced his displeasure at his performance as well. Haku? I do not know. She has, unless ordered otherwise, remained very close to me since my return. That's not all bad, is it? No, I am amenable to it, but am unsure of the motivation. She says she is fine, but I do not believe that to be the case. However, I am unsure how to proceed. Kakashi thought about the Hayaton user and what he knew of her, not taking long for his vast intellect to reach a conclusion. You know, she defined herself by her ability to protect and be of value to Zabuza. For a long time that's how she understood the world. I doubt she's changed that radically in such a short time. Maybe she believed she should have been better able to protect you and feels bad she could not. We are a team and she is my friend, not a guard. Naruto responds. Yes, but the same could be said for you. Once you confirmed Orochimaru was behind the abduction, you could have allowed Jiraiya-sama to reverse summon you. You have to allow that your friends will be as protective of you as you are of them. I accept the premise, but I am perfectly fine and yet she is not. Then maybe she needs some reassurance, Kakashi suggested. Naruto looked at his sensei to see if there would be more, and when there was not, he nodded and began to write his reports. Knowing a secondary conversation wouldn't impede his report writing, Kakashi continued. So, about Orochimaru, how do you feel about all of that? I am unsure. As he is a known traitor and enemy to Aji-san and the Leaf, I am tempted to simply dismiss his words about the Yondaime as empty. What did he say about Minato-sensei? He said he was a natural killer, and his interest in me was that we shared that trait. Is it true? Naruto asked, and Kakashi experienced a wave of revulsion. No. Orochimaru is mad and his madness colors his perspective. Minato-sensei simply could endure the realities of shinobi life better than anyone I've known. He knew how to make and accept the hard decisions, but when the mission was over he knew how to enjoy life. If I see any comparison between you two, it is that. Sensei was a skilled killer, but he didn't enjoy it. He also wasn't racked with guilt. Orochimaru is a psychopath, and no matter what he says, I know you aren't that. Kakashi explained to his student. Naruto nodded as he finished his report, submitting it to Tsunade via the shared storage seal. He was going to start on a seal project, but Sai came through the door, ever-present smile on his face. We subdued 3 enemy ninja, Sai stated. Excellent work. I'll meet up with Haku, you stay here with Naruto-kun. He instructed the smiling boy. Sai nodded and Kakashi started toward Haku, easily reversing Sai's route through scent. Is Haku okay? She's a sadist. Sai offered his psychological diagnosis. Physically? Yes, ignoring the sadism, she is well. Tsunade sat in the cafeteria with her longtime student, enjoying her soup and sandwich. She could have eaten in her office, but she made it a point to be in common areas. No, she wasn't the warmest nor friendliest person in the world, but her staff couldn't find her unapproachable either. Eating amongst them was just one way she attempted to show that. Her hazel orbs were looking over Naruto's just submitted report, and she was intrigued. If he were correct, it pointed towards some interesting treatment options, but she wouldn't know until Team 7 returned. As she was handing the report to Shizen, intending to request her opinion, the Sannin was joined by a purple-haired Kunoichi. Tsunade considered the woman standing in front of her. It wasn't hard to deduce who she was given the hair, the last Senju having seen the ANBU around from time to time. Some might wonder how ANBU were allowed such distinctive characteristics, but if you were an enemy, and you saw ANBU, you were about to die anyway. Forgive me for interrupting, Tsunade-sama, but may I have a moment of your time? The fellow leaf ninja asked. Sure, Yugao, ma'am. Yuzuki Yugao. Yugao, of course, have a seat. Tsunade invited and the swordswoman accepted. What can I do for you? I was hoping you could tell me a little about Uzumaki Naruto-kun. I was on his detail when he was small but reassigned once he joined the academy and haven't been able to keep tabs on him since. Yugao explained, but Tsunade was incredulous. So curious just because you watched him several years ago? If I'm going to discuss my student with a relative stranger, I need a little more than that. Besides, you wouldn't want me to misread your motives. Yugao received the threat, as it was intended, but showed no outward signs she was intimidated. I was mentored by his mother for a short time before she became pregnant, she shared. I would have liked to have been more involved, but it was thought to be safer if I was not. Sandame-sama just gave me permission to meet with him socially, and I thought I could share some things with him about his mom that others wouldn't know. Okay. Well, Shizen spends as much time with him as I do, so what would you say about your kohai? Tsunade asked teasingly. Her student had taken to Naruto quite fast, liking someone paying such close attention to her. Tsunade knew her longtime student well enough to know she had to fight the urge to treat the boy like a life-size plushie every time he cocked his head to the side and squinted when in deep thought. Shizen wasn't affected by her master's taunts, having grown used to them over the years. She, instead, simply answered Yugao. Naruto-kun approaches the world as if it is a series of puzzles. Some he solves quickly, others more slowly, but I doubt he ever gives up. This is why he'll make a good diagnostician. The problem is, he's so used to trying to figure things out that he often misses when he should simply experience something. He idolizes the Sandaime, adores Konohamaru-kun, and cherishes his best friend, Hinata-chan, though he likely doesn't understand that's how he feels about these individuals. He can be very kind, in his way, never intending to be rude or mean. But given recent events, he can also be very unkind if the situation calls for it. Yugao could only grimly nod at the final part of Shizen's statement. She saw the aftermath of his unkindness. Brat also likes the ladies. Yes, I've heard whispers about his fondness for the fairer sex. I worry about Kakashi and Jiraiya-sama's influence. Oh yeah, that'll be something to stamp out, but I mean he genuinely likes women. I don't think it's an accident most of his friends are girls. Yugao nodded at Tsunade's correction. Is there anything else I should know? Both medics answered in the negative and Yugao departed. She had a few more stops to make before her information gathering was completed. Kakashi arrived to the scene of the battle, if it could be called that. The three ninja that harmed his cute little students were riddled with Senbon and unconscious. He found that surprising because from what Naruto told to him, this Haku was a precision fighter. However, it appeared she went to town on the three felled ninja before him. Paired with the vision of overwhelming violence, Haku stood before the copy ninja looking quite innocent. It was slightly unnerving. Haku-chan, report, Kakashi casually ordered. I saw the three making their way to the cabin and intercepted them. They tried to resist and greater force was called for, she answered. And you are sure all this was necessary? Kakashi asked, skeptical of her conclusion. Very, Hataki-san. Well, good. Why don't you head back to the cabin and I'll educate these young men on the error of their wicked ways. They are unconscious, Hataki-san, Haku observed. Then it will be a short lesson, won't it? Kakashi posed the rhetorical question while favoring Haku with an eye smile. She simply departed via Shunshin and allowed the odd man to do what he was. Kakashi returned to his observance of the trio of fair-skinned and platinum-blonde missing ninja. He knew them, the three were infamous. Called the Lightning Brothers, The triplets had the distinct dishonor of becoming missing ninja because they were too stupid to find their way back to Kumo after a mission. I simply wanted to be rid of them, hence the burn notice. Now, what to do with you poor devils? You aren't really worth enough to bother with a bounty. Can't possibly know enough to use for information. Anything you did know, Jiraiya is currently making it moot anyway. And you hurt my team. Decisions. As Haku arrived to the cabin, she heard the faint sounds of many birds chirping. Yuga walked into the dimly lit bar. It was the perfect spot for day drinking, dark, moderately spacious, and with a workforce and clientele that knew how to keep secrets. She just hoped her target was sober enough to be of use, or even mildly coherent. He was not a hard man to spot, even in a place as sparsely lit as her current location. He simply oozed a regal aura, fitting for the head of the Hyuga clan. What was unexpected was his company, several of the other clan heads. Yuga approached the shared booth and gave a slight bow when the clan leaders turned to her. Forgive my intrusion, but may I have a brief word with you, Hayashi-sama? Yuga-san, Hayashi greeted. Unless it is Hyuga business, I am sure whatever you wish to discuss with me can happen right here, Hayashi offered. In truth, he was drunk and had no desire to leave his seat. If you're sure, Yuga responded, and the man nodded while Choza offered her a seat. I wish to ask you about your impression of Uzumaki Naruto-kun. I know Hinata and he are friends, and I was just wanted your opinion of him. What makes you so interested in the pup? Some asked in curiosity. Hayashi chuckled and said, Careful, Tsum. If Yugao-san answered that, she'd have to kill the majority of us at this table, and I like my head where it is. It makes me look regal. You get self-complimentary when you drink, Hayashi. It's too troublesome, Shikaka observed. Hayashi-san seems to know more than he should, Yugao stated. The directive given to the ANBU and Jiraiya was not widely spread to other shinobi, clan head or otherwise. How he knew of the Sandame's orders to silence anyone that questioned, investigated, or implied anything remotely true about Naruto's heritage was to be removed with extreme prejudice. Some might say it is cruel to have such an order given to the most elite assassins of the village without informing anyone else, but the Sandame reasoned if he didn't tell anyone not to look into Naruto's ancestry, they wouldn't question why they shouldn't. I wish I could claim some stellar ninja tradecraft, but the Sandame informed himself a few years ago. Now, about Naruto-san. Hayashi started but was cut off. He's an incorrigible pervert with designs on my baby girl, Inoichi complained. And he even managed to win my wife over. I don't get how Hayashi allows him around Hinata so much. We should team up, Hayashi. Team up and save our little girls, Inoichi pleaded as he slammed his drink down. The overprotective father thing would work better if your and my child weren't juvenile soldiers, Inoichi. Have some self-respect, Hayashi chastised. Yes, there is a whole lot I can't protect my Ino-chan from, but boys, I can do that. And look, I wrote up the psychological profile on Naruto, and it made me disgusted with this village for a very long time. He doesn't get my daughter's virginity because of it. Shut the hell up, Inoichi, Tsum barked. You can't decide who your kid sleeps with, when she chooses to, any more than you could decide her hair color. And if the genders were reversed, you wouldn't even care. I am comfortable in my hypocrisy, Inoichi said. Typical male, Inuzuka replied. Troublesome. Hayashi, you haven't answered Yugao-san's question. Right, sorry. The Hyuga apologized. Yugao waved him off. Uzumaki Naruto, our greatest dishonor as a village and mine as a father. I owe the young man. He managed to get through to Hinata-chan when none of my methods worked. You mean being a hard ass and then a harder ass? Tsum asked. Yes. She's developed incredibly well since they became friends, and I worry about her less because of it. Am I thrilled that she has designs on a boy with a wandering eye? No, but I know better than to stand between a Hyuga woman and her desire. As for the boy himself, he is honest and polite, though never deferential. I trust if Hinata ever needed him for something, he'd deliver it. That must make you anxious given the old. Shikaka pointed to his forehead. And it did give Hayashi pause. He didn't know how good the Uzumaki was at seals as far as official ranking, but he knew the boy was incredibly skilled. The sole condition he put on Hinata's friendship with Naruto was that she did not try to get him to remove the caged bird's seal. He remembered the visible pain in her eyes when she agreed to forego one of her sincerest desires. A little, Hayashi said. Kiba said the pup was kinda weird, like emotionless or something. He has emotions, Inoichi corrected. I'm too drunk to go into it, but he has them. And we're lucky muted effect is all he has. Inoichi took 2 quick shots before continuing. Damn kid deserved better. Cursed to have a father that loved the village more than him, because he believed in the village that would let a no-name orphan be its leader. The will of fire. We pissed on it. Hold up, are you saying dash? Some started, but Hayashi interrupted her before the only sober ninja among them, and Anbu no less, silenced her. He isn't saying anything, Tsum. Right, Inoichi? Pfft, whatever. If we'd done right, things would be different. If either of them were here, could come back and see what we caused, you couldn't dig the graves fast enough. A collective shudder was had by the table as they imagined chakra chains and teleporting ninja. Getting what she came for, even if it wasn't much, Yugao excused herself and left, resolving to never do that again. Haku looked at the flowers being presented to her, the assortment of red, yellow, and orange meshed with the dusk setting. She also noticed the bouquet wrapped in sealing paper, her rudimentary knowledge telling her the seals had something to do with water. She concluded Naruto created some kind of hydrating seal, removing the need for a water-filled vase. As she reached for the flowers, her eyes moved away from the impromptu gift to the blue eyes of the gift giver. Some would call them blank, but she knew better. Free from judgment, yes, but never empty of meaning. Thank you, Naruto-kun. What have I done to receive such a lovely gift? Naruto squinted and leaned his head to the side. Haku assumed it was an expression of surprise. He likely hadn't thought she'd asked why she was receiving a gift. Hataki-sensei said I should come up with a way to reassure you that I am okay so you will be okay. It didn't shock the Hayatan user that he noticed her change in behavior. She knew Sai was right, she had been clingy as a way to manage her guilt. If she wasn't so insistent on not killing, she would not have left herself open to that arrow and Naruto wouldn't have been taken. I know you are. I'm sorry for crowding you, Naruto-kun. I do not feel crowded, though I do not know what it is to feel crowded. I do not mind you being close, Haku. And what happened was not your fault. I should have seen to our security and did not. I was negligent, and we were ambushed because of it. I subsequently failed to get all responsible, but should the opportunity arise in the future, I will not fail again. We all share responsibility, Naruto-kun. Haku countered. While he could have, placing down security seals post-mission would be paranoid in most situations. It was not unreasonable to think themselves far enough away from the base to be out of the range of retaliation, and with Jiraiya with them that'd scare off all but the most. Do you really believe that? Naruto asked, but it couldn't quell the realization Haku just had. Honestly, no. I was so used to seeing myself as a tool for Zabuza that being a friend is very new. You and even Saikun are dear to me, so if you are harmed it feels like I have failed my purpose. However, now I am wondering something else. Isn't it convenient those sound ninja attacked while Jiraiya was meeting a contact? Haku watched as Naruto squinted as he thought, quickly coming to the same conclusion she had. Jiraiya's contact sold us out. I think it is possible, the timing is too coincidental. And while I've heard of coincidence, I've never once seen it. Naruto didn't respond, but Haku knew it was because the next steps were obvious: alert Jiraiya and lay a trap for the burned contact. And as she changed topics, he wouldn't go back to her recent behavior. Thank you, Naruto-kun. You already thanked me for the flowers. Not for those, but they are lovely. Thank you for being my friend and never judging me. Thank you for accepting me. Haku said, but her words were hollow, a poor measure for how she was feeling. I hope Hinata-chan will forgive me. She spoke. Naruto was going to ask what she need forgiveness for, but before the words could leave his mouth, he felt two warm, moist lips on his own. It was over as fast as it began, but the Uzumaki was speechless. He felt an unfamiliar warmth in his face. Haku ran her hands through his spiky locks and giggled, turning away and walking toward the cabin. Not even Kakashi appearing beside him stirred the genin out of his trance. Your first kiss, and with a cutie no less. You do your sensei proud, Naruto-kun, Kakashi said, favoring his student with an eye smile. Naruto could only respond with a slight smile as his hand rubbed the back of his head. His only thought was that he should try to reassure his friends more often. Chapter 15. A flutter of his eyes is how Konohamaru started the day. He looked out his window and could see it was still dark, just a little sunlight peeking over the horizon. The young Sarutobi yawned as he stretched his arms to the sky, then swiftly removed his blue and green comforter. It was time to start his day. Changing out of his monkey print pajamas, Konohamaru put on his navy blue training gi, sandals and headed outside. Konohamaru stared at his pre-dawn foe. The same one he faced every morning. He took up his stance, knees bent, back straight. He approached his enemy and proceeded to strike it relentlessly. The first task of his morning routine was hitting a training dummy, and Konohamaru was diligent in his practice. Rhythmic thuds could be heard as Konohamaru followed the striking progression his grandpa showed him, paying attention to his footwork as well. When he learned that no one woke up his Nai-chan every morning to train, it initially made him sad, but it also motivated him. He believed his Nai-chan must be really dedicated to wake up on his own and start his day. After that, the youngest Sarutobi resolved to do the same. It took time, but he got there, impressing his mother and grandfather both. After 45 minutes of non-stop striking, Konohamaru ends his session. He ignored the dull hum of pain he felt in his limbs. The pain once being more pronounced was only a minor annoyance. A quick shower and change of clothes later, Kono was seated at the breakfast table. His uncle Asuma was drinking tea, looking barely awake. That is, until an unexpected presence joined them. "Grandpa?" the academy student asked in genuine surprise. Normally, his grandfather would be already hard at work in his office. "Konohamaru-kun, Asuma," Hiruzen greeted with a kind smile. "Father, you playing hooky today?" "No such luck. I was invited to see a worksite today is all. I'll go to my office after that," the aged Hokage answered Asuma, mirth brimming in his eyes. It took Konohamaru a second to process Hiruzen's words, but when he did, a face-splitting grin adorned his face. "Really, Grandpa?" he asked in excitement and mild disbelief. He knew his grandfather was incredibly busy, so creating extra time for his family was difficult. While he missed him, and his mom, Konohamaru normally had his Nai-chan around to take some of the loneliness away, along with Moegi and Udon. However, even his extended absence had the young Sarutobi feeling a little down. Hiruzen recognized his grandson's emotional state, it resonating with him deeply due to how he'd failed Naruto. He promised himself to do better and made time for Kono. "Really? So eat up, I want to see this modern marvel my grandsons have concocted." Hiruzen smiled as his grandson ate as fast as he could while still adhering to proper table etiquette. As soon as he was done, he was rushing his grandfather out the door. So busy with his breakfast, and Hiruzen doting on Konohamaru, either noticed the frown of Asuma when he heard his father mention seeing the work of his grandsons, plural. The two diminutive Sarutobis walked throughout the village. It was early yet, so most shops were just opening. All were delighted to see their Hokage and the honorable grandson and greeted them warmly. Hiruzen returned the gestures, but Konohamaru was silent. He used to hate being called the honorable grandson, wanting to be known as his own person. But when he walked with his Nai-chan, he saw how different they treated him. At least being called the honorable grandson was nice. They ignored his Nai-chan like they couldn't see him, like he wasn't worthy of their notice. It made the young boy angry, and he wanted to blow up, to yell at them. He remembered once asking his Nai-chan if their treatment bothered him, if their lack of acknowledgement made him sad. He said, "You acknowledge me, so what more do I need?" and spoke no more on the matter. Konohamaru remembered how happy that made him, and while he would still be bothered by the village not treating his Nai-chan well, he wouldn't complain about what they called him. Honorable grandson was a challenge. When Konohamaru proved himself to be more than the Hokage's grandson, everyone would recognize him as such. Until then, he had his family and his Nai-chan. That was enough. The duo arrived to their destination, the nearly completed remodel of Naruto's apartment complex. The retail sections were already installed, as were many of the other amenities. Hiruzen smiled when he recalled the first time he visited the site with Kono-chan. His grandson insisted that, "No one gets on my site without a hard hat, Grandpa." And while it was silly for the god of shinobi to be overly concerned about falling debris, if Inoki couldn't kill him from the sky, then a brick wasn't, he placated the littlest foreman in the land of fire. "You think Nichan will be happy?" Konohamaru asked. "I think he will be quite pleased and very thankful you kept the crews on task," Hiruzen said, rubbing Kono's head. The younger Sarutobi blushed at the contact and flashed a 1,000-watt smile. Konohamaru gave his grandfather a quick tour, as it was almost time for the academy to start. Hiruzen was impressed, taking apartments with exterior exits and building a complex connecting to the back of the original structure, leaving the possibility of erecting another tower of apartments at a later date. It was a wise investment, and Naruto would do well because of it. So would Konohamaru, as unbeknown to him his brother had created a generous trust fund for him once he reached the age of majority. After the tour, in which Konohamaru even explained some of the sealing used, in rudimentary terms, the pair parted. Noticing the time, Konohamaru darted toward the academy, not wishing to incur Irika-sensei's wrath. Nearing his destination, the Sarutobi heir was confident he would make it on time by the slimmest of margins. His hopes were dashed when he heard the sounds of bullying not far from his location. He sighed, as intervening was going to make him late, but as the future Hokage it was his responsibility to look out for his people. Sometimes the will of fire was a pain. Konohamaru shimmed up a nearby tree and then, utilizing the steps of the silent killing method he'd learned, stealthily made his way to the group. Once in full view, Konohamaru frowned. It seemed Heike and his two lackeys were picking on a Hyuga. By all appearances, 1 year younger than them. If that wasn't enough to make him want to pound them, that these were the boys that insulted his Nai-chan surely did. While younger and outnumbered, the Hyuga girl didn't seem to care as she took up her stance, tired of the boys insulting her eyes. Look, the baby wants to fight. Guess she thinks because she comes from some big deal clan she can take us. Isn't that right, baby? Heike mocked, causing the girl to glare. As she was set to go on the offensive, her plans were interrupted by a blur coming from up above. Konohamaru, having had his fill of Heike's mouth, jumped down from the tree and chopped the boy on the back of his neck. Before the two lackeys, who had been on either side of Heike, could turn around, Konohamaru delivered 2 debilitating blows simultaneously to the kidneys of the hangers-on. They dropped immediately, passing out from the shock of the painful strikes. I could have handled them, the Hyuga stated, and Konohamaru rubbed the back of his head in embarrassment. I'm sure you could have, Hyuga-san, but as the future 6th Hokage it's important I help out where I can. The Hyuga member wanted to scoff at the boy's pronouncement, but for some reason his bright smile was infectious and she couldn't. Hanabi-chan! A voice called out, and the girl looked toward it. When she turned back around, the interloper, as she refused to consider him her savior, was gone as if he'd never been there. Hanabi-chan, you have to stop running off, Natsu, her caretaker, admonished. And did you attack these boys? Hayashi-sama will not be pleased. I didn't do it, some boy did. But it was since they were picking on me, Hanabi explained. Natsu nodded and watched as the boys returned to consciousness. You 3 are lucky you didn't touch Hanabi-sama. Attacking the clan head's daughter could cause the entire clan to retaliate. Do not do it again, Natsu warned, her bloodline activated and menacing glare in full effect. The boys paled and limped off. As the now identified Hanabi was informing Natsu of her brief run in, Konohamaru was sneaking into class through the window. Either Udan or Moegi was kind enough to leave it open and Irika had his back turned. Kono silently moved toward his chair, taking a seat without calling attention to himself. Just as he was about to relax, a piece of chalk rocketed toward him, hitting the Sarutobi dead between the eyes and knocking him back in his seat and to the ground. "Ow!" Konohamaru exclaimed. "What's the big idea, Irika-sensei?" he asked as he got up, returning his chair to the upright position. "The big idea, Konohamaru, is that you're late and instead of taking responsibility you tried to sneak in. It's almost as if I want to be a ninja," he said under his breath, but loud enough for Irika to hear, causing the instructor to fling another piece of chalk toward the boy, hitting in the same location. "Watch that smart mouth, speak quieter or learn to dodge," Irika advised. Konohamaru continued to mutter about his sensei, and it is only his long-instilled discipline that allowed the academy teacher to continue his lesson plan, as a part of him wanted to inform Konohamaru that there was no way that could fit there, and then wash the boy's mouth out for such language. When Heike and his crew walk in, the signs of them having been attacked are obvious. 2 of the boys are limping in pain and Heike looked glassy-eyed. It didn't take much for Irika to conclude they did something, and Konohamaru attacked them again, though this time he seemed to come away unscathed from the encounter. "Why are you 3 late?" Irika questioned, and their body language signaled they planned to lie. "Tell the truth. We were just messing around and then someone jumped us from behind," Heike explained. Irika narrowed his eyes at the brown-haired boy. "And you didn't see who did it?" All 3 shook their heads no. "Well, regardless, you're late, so you'll be running extra laps during PT. Now, take your seats." The morning lessons continued without further interruption. Konohamaru liked Irika-sensei but found the man's lecturing style to be boring. When he felt his concentration slipping, he practiced an exercise his mom taught him, a way to half pay attention to Irika-sensei and absorb the lecture while discreetly scoping out the classroom. It was the most exciting place to surveil, as almost nothing changed, but it gave Konohamaru enough of a break so he could refresh himself. Before he knew it, lunchtime had arrived and the Sarutobi was thankful for the break. After getting their lunch trays, the Konohamaru Corps decided to eat outside. As they enjoyed the midday weather, a yellow toad appeared on the table in a cloud of smoke. It was one of his Nii-chan's summons, Kono observed. Gamatatsu? Konohamaru asked in surprise. Hi, Konohamaru. Do you have any snacks? The little toad asked, causing the three students to form a sweat drop. Before that, did Nii-chan send you here for a reason? Oh yeah. He said he'd be back in 2 days. Now, can I have some snacks? Didn't Nii-chan already give you some in payment? Kono asked, knowing it to be the case. It doesn't mean I can't get more, Gamatatsu reasoned. Fine, you want to hang out until lunch is over? Kono asked, and the toad nodded in glee. The trio shared their lunches with the summons as they chatted about various topics. It was a pleasant lunch until it was interrupted by the last people Konohamaru wanted to deal with. Hey! Heike shouted as he marched over to the table, flanked by his usual company. It was you, wasn't it? You hit me before class and I got in trouble for it. I don't know what you're talking about, Heike-san. The Sarutobi responded, feigning innocence. Liar, it was you. Tell me why I shouldn't pound you into the ground? Heike threatened as he arrived to his destination, having brought the attention of a crowd with him. How about the fact he's already kicked your butt before? Moegi questioned. The schoolyard bully's face went red. That was luck. But you're accusing him of having done it again. Twice isn't luck, Udan reasoned, angering the boy even more. No longer thinking, he lashed out and grabbed Konohamaru by the collar with one hand and lifted the other to strike him. The firm grip of Iruka-sensei prevented the punch from ever being thrown. Go to the headmaster right now, Iruka ordered, and then turned his attention to the rest of the students. And all of you return to class. All complied except the Konohamaru Corps. Iruka saw the anger in the eyes of the Hokage's grandson, and he wanted to avoid Konohamaru lashing out or escalating things. You did the right thing by not engaging with him, Konohamaru. Sometimes it takes more courage not to act. I'm proud of you. Konohamaru smiled at Iruka and gathered his things. It's time to go, Gamatatsu, but I'll see you later. Okay. Make sure to have more snacks, the glutton requested before disappearing. Kono simply shook his head at the weird, little toad. At least Gamakichi cared about more than just snacks. Are you really going to let Heike get away with grabbing you, Kono-kun? Moegi asked out of curiosity. No. Iruka-sensei was right. It was the wrong time to act. Too many witnesses. Besides, one more beatdown wasn't going to solve the problem. I'll break that stupid jerk overtime until he begs me to stop. You have a plan? Udan asked. Not yet. But I will, and no one will be able to prove a thing, Kore. Jiraiya looked over his temporary team as they walked in the busy village streets. Since his lecturing to Naruto hadn't been successful, he decided to take a different tact. He worked his godson. Morning, noon, and night. The same for the other two, but he planned to really put Naruto through the ringer. What stood out to him most was that none of them complained or showed signs of discomfort. No frowns or grunts of exertion even when nearing exhaustion. It was maddening, as one of the perks of being a sensei is slightly torturing your students and reveling in their discomfort. When the physical exercises weren't enough, Jiraiya tossed in more sparring. The team against him, the team sparring themselves, and they sparring him individually, though that was mostly saved for Naruto. And yet nothing. Even making Naruto increase his resistance seals at a higher rate only netted him a hum of acknowledgement. When just purely physical work didn't get the desired results, he made them expand their chakra manipulation. He had side drawing different beasts of different species and sizes as fast as he could for as long as he could. Haku was made to practice pulling water out of the air. Naruto was given a B rank Katan Jutsu and told to learn it without completing any of the nature transformation exercises. Sai increased the efficacy of his main jutsu. Haku expanded her chakra reserves while maintaining her control, and Naruto had a field-ready version of the fire technique. His intention was to impart the lesson to never cross or mislead him. That he'd work them into the ground if they did. But as the primary culprit remained indifferent to Jiraiya's lesson, all he'd really done is make them stronger, faster, and better. The little shits. Still, he felt pride in their growth. They would only be his temporary team, but it reminded him of his old team while being different enough to not hurt or fill him with regrets. I'll get the rooms at the inn, check in by nightfall, Jiraiya ordered. They were on their last mission, escorting the Kazekage's children and Jounin-sensei to Konoha for the Chunin exams. He cautioned Naruto against revealing anything since they'd be competition. The blonde simply nodded but said nothing in response. Meeting them at the border had been a non-event as far as Jiraiya was concerned, though he found Baki a little stiff and the short child to be weird and intense. As Jiraiya made his way to the inn to secure the rooms, he simply couldn't know what his proximity to the Suna Jounin was doing to the semi-veiled man. Baki was a top man of Suna. Strong enough and trusted enough to steward the Kazekage's children through their paths of becoming ninja. He'd seen war, lost friends, and carried the regrets that came with their profession. He didn't scare easily. Razasama had his respect but did not invoke a sense of fear. Even Gaara was more a resigned wariness. But when he saw Jiraiya, the Toad Sage, was going to be his escort, he'd swore Suna's planned betrayal had been uncovered and the Sannin was there to kill them all. The trio of junior ninja that followed didn't help matters. They didn't talk. One of them was always smiling and the smallest one looked vaguely familiar. It set him on edge. To make matters worse, Baki knew if Gaara pulled any of his psycho nonsense with Jiraiya, the boy was going to get his head caved in and there wasn't much Baki could do about it. He'd defend his student and village asset with his life, but he had no need to sell himself on a false future. The outcome was known, the resistance offered a mere formality. In short, his life depended on Gaara acting somewhat normally. Even Tsunade Senju wouldn't take those odds. If he survived the exams and the invasion, Baki promised himself a 2-week vacation in a far-off oasis. As the Suna Jounin, and his most dangerous student, followed Jiraiya, the other kids were left alone. Haku was the first to speak, suggesting she go look for a suitable spot for an early dinner. Kankuro opted to go with her. He seemed a little eager in Naruto's opinion, not that he understood why he made the observation. As those two departed and Sai went off to do Sai things, which could include painting the landscape or assassinating someone for Danzo-sen, Naruto simply walked up to the nearest person. "Excuse me, ma'am," Naruto interrupted. The woman looked down at the small boy and thought he was cute until she recognized his headband and stiffened just slightly. She'd never interacted with any of her country's ninja before, but she'd heard stories. "Yes? Do you know where the nearest bookstore is? And possibly somewhere to pick up a trinket for a 9-year-old boy?" Naruto asked. He noticed the smile had quickly left her face but was confused when he returned after his question. "Sure, sweetie. Just go down this main street and take the third left. We have a few shops for souvenirs or toys and a nice-sized bookstore at the end of the walkway." "Thank you, ma'am," Naruto said and then walked away. He noticed the Suna Kunoichi was following him. "Can I help you, Temari-san? So you do speak? I was starting to wonder," she said sarcastically. She couldn't have known that Haku, Sai, and Naruto had been in constant communication, for them, using the communicator seal. "If you wanted to speak to me, Temari-san, you could have simply spoke to me," Naruto reasoned and saw the cute girl blush a little. "That's fair. So, where are we going?" "I am in search of a book and a small item for my little brother." Temari gained this fair-off look as she turned her head away from Naruto. "It's nice," she started, "to think about your little brother while on a mission. Not everyone would do that." Temari thought Naruto didn't follow up on her statement out of a sense of decorum. In truth, he simply had nothing to add. As they passed by several shops, Naruto saw various toys that would appeal to a civilian but nothing that would interest Kono-chan. He saw some porcelain masks that looked vaguely similar to the ones the ANBU wear, but Kono-chan could get that from his Kanna-san. Temari watched as the Sunshine Blonde looked over the items. To a less astute person it would look like he was dismissing things without consideration, but she had a feeling the boy was doing the exact opposite. She watched him categorically reject a multitude of objects until he stopped rigid and pointed at something. "How much, sir?" Temari heard him ask but didn't hear the price quoted back. The boy retrieved a frog wallet and gave a wad of Rio notes. The shopkeep put the item in the bag and finally she saw what garnered the Leaf Nin's approval, a pair of goggles. They were midnight blue, single lens. She had no idea why that was the right one but didn't bother to ask. After buying his item, the boy continued along to the bookstore, Temari right behind him. She was surprised to see him go straight to the self-help and relationship section, her mouth moving faster than her mind. "Are you in the right section?" she asked. "Yes," was the one-word reply. Like he did with the toys, her temporary companion breezed through multiple titles, seemingly rejecting them. What could you need from this section? You're pretty young to need a self-help book, or one about relationships even. Naruto turned to her, his blue eyes peering into her teal orbs. I received a kiss from a friend recently, but I'm not sure why or how to gain another. I seek information to that end. Temari was silenced by the response, and Naruto took it as her being satisfied, so he resumed his search. Inwardly, Temari fumed that this pipsqueak managed to get a kiss before she did. If the boys of her village were intimidated by her father, they were terrified of her brother. No one would even attempt to ask her out. Temari felt she had to do something to salvage her self-esteem. Maybe you're reading too much into it. One of your little friends got crazy and gave you a peck. I wouldn't think too much about it. You're what, 12? It really wasn't that big a deal. Yes, I am 12. Haku is 15. Even by your logic, her actions would be more considered than my own. Naruto spoke, never looking away from the bookshelf. He missed Temari's reaction of irritation. Haku was the kunoichi of his team, and the wind mistress could admit the girl was very pretty. Like, the embodiment of pretty. And she kissed this gaki? So why not just ask her to be your girlfriend? Seems simple enough unless you're afraid. Naruto grabbed a book and headed toward the front, Temari quickly following behind him. If I asked Haku to be my girlfriend, it would be inappropriate to receive kisses from other people, and yet there are multiple girls I would like to eventually kiss. I simply want Haku to kiss me too. Temari gained a tick mark as absorbed the Uzumaki's words. So annoyed she didn't fully notice they had left the stores until a breeze was felt on her skin. Are you some kind of heir or something? Temari asked, trying to find a justification for what she read as arrogance coming from the boy. Both my parents are dead and left me an inheritance, so yes, I am an heir, Naruto answered, never breaking stride. Temari flinched, wondering if she'd upset him. Sorry, didn't mean to offend you. I am not offended, Temari-san. My parents died when I was very young and I've had years to accept it. Naruto continued, new destination in mind. So, they left you with a little brother to care for? She asked, remembering how she was expected to watch after Kankuro and little Gaara when her mom passed. No, my brother is not through biology. Oh, you were adopted. No, I was never adopted, Temari-san. She winced. I'm really making an ass of myself, aren't I? She considered just going to the inn to escape the awkwardness. I am not familiar with this phrase, Temari-san, but from your tone I assume it is not a good thing. No, it means I'm embarrassing myself and being a jerk. Naruto fully turned to look at the older girl in confusion. He really didn't know why she'd be embarrassed, but it would be rude to just dismiss it outright. Looking her over and noting current conditions, Naruto came to a conclusion. Oh, how have you embarrassed yourself? Did the breeze catch your skirt? Temari blushed red at the question. No, you pervert. Why would that be your guess? I could see no other reason for your embarrassment, and many would be so if strangers got a look at their panties. Or proof you weren't wearing any. An embarrassed anger surged through Temari as she protested. Of course I'm wearing panties. Naruto nodded as he continued walking, but did think deeply about her words. Of course would imply the following words would be obvious. However, Hinata-chan had informed him she didn't wear panties, so it wasn't a given that all kunoichi did. Naruto reasoned it was possible Hinata-chan hadn't told him the truth in an attempt to make a joke or prank him. There was really only one way to know, and as he'd already quoted her his charge for medical services, he'd only have to find a reason to provide them. Naruto continued to consider his dilemma as Temari and he entered a small tavern. Temari, still embarrassed, never asked how Naruto knew to come here as the rest of his team and Kankuro were already seated. She noticed her brother looked sad for some reason. When the brother and sister pair made eye contact, they asked simultaneously, "What's wrong with you?" Each answering just as fast, "I'll tell you later." Temari's blush continued to recede while Kankuro's look of depression remained the same. Dinner came and went. Haku made sure to get takeout for the three that hadn't joined, and well before nightfall the ninja arrived at the inn. After checking in with Jiraiya, Naruto went to the roof to read, not wanting to show Haku his new purchase. Sai followed his friend, wanting to work on his own side project. Haku stayed in their shared room while Temari and Kankuro adjourned to their own, with a silent Gaara sitting and staring at nothing in particular. "Okay, we're alone now, Kankuro. What happened?" "The leaf kunoichi. I was giving her my grade A stuff, my best material, and she just turned me down flat." "You're depressed because a girl you met hours ago didn't fall for your crappy pickup lines?" "Seriously?" Temari asked in disbelief. "She's so hot." was Kankuro's defense. She's somewhat attractive, don't overstate things, Temari retorted carelessly. When she reconsidered her words, she wondered why she was running down a girl she'd already, internally, admitted was incredibly pretty. She's a smoke show, and that's a fact. Temari, I'm in love. You're both annoying. Gaara finally spoke. He'd love to threaten to kill them, he'd love to simply kill them and be rid of their company, but Baki made it clear that should he indulge in any such activities before the exam, the tall Konoha ninja would execute him without fail. Something even his father would have difficulty with. It set Gaara on edge, and Mother was being uncharacteristically quiet. He didn't like it, any of it. He decided to go to the roof to be alone before he killed someone by accident. Couldn't you just ask? Sai posed his question as he applied his oil-based paint to canvas. One of the benefits of having a Seal Master for a friend was it made packing his art supplies easy and convenient. I considered that approach. I concluded that much like my offers to have sex at a future date, it may be indelicate to simply ask. It also feels cumbersome. Naruto answered while reading the introduction to his new book, Escalation of Affection, a treatise on the transition from platonic to romantic love. Cumbersome? Sai asked as he thought about the dilemma. Are you concerned about rejection? Was her unprompted willingness causal in your enjoyment? It is not a variable I can rule out, but as I was taken by surprise and only have one case, data is limited. Still, we must consider that you not only want future kisses, but you want Haku to want to kiss you. Are you sure this is worth it? Sai asked earnestly. He hadn't gotten his friend's interest in this realm of human expression. It seemed like more trouble than it was worth. I would be vehement in my assurance that it is, to bail. Naruto answered, muttering the last part. Neither boy was alarmed when the redhead Suna ninja arrived on the roof. He took to one corner and made no effort to converse with them, so they let him be. As late evening transitioned into early night, Sai packed up his materials and went back to the room. Naruto resolved to stay, utilizing a flashlight to continue reading. In the back of his mind, he resolved to find a way to read in the dark without need of a said appliance. Gaara had come to the roof to be alone, but once he arrived, his attention fell onto the two boys there already. They felt empty, and it bothered him. He was not used to apathy, and it made him wonder if these people were simply good at masking their intent to harm him. Seeing that the blonde was going to stay, he decided to approach him. Why do you feel empty? I don't know what that means, Naruto said as he continued reading, but found the question odd. You have no emotions, not in the entire time you've been in my presences have you shown any? Is this a trick by my father to lower my guard? It will not work. I thought shinobi were meant to not show emotions. Logically, if you're surrounded by those that do, they must be inferior, and your question should be why they emote, not why I do not. Secondly, I do not take orders from your father or any non-leaf ninja not given authority by the Hokage and the daimyo. Finally, the state of your guard is your concern. Getting you to Konoha unharmed is mine. Gaara paused. He wasn't sure what to do. His father barked orders and made threats, and almost no one else spoke to him, so someone calmly rebutting him in a rational way was a new experience. He wasn't sure if he liked it. He almost walked back to his corner of the roof, but that felt like a retreat, as if he'd been bested by this boy. He was Gaara of the desert, that would not be allowed. He zeroed in on what the blonde was reading. It appeared to be a book about relationships. He wanted to scoff. He was just like everyone else, attempting to validate his existence through others. The strong only needed to love themselves. Why do you read such drivel? Gaara asked, a sneer on his face. To seek information I do not currently have. Have you read this book? What makes it bad? Once again Gaara was confused by the response. Of course not, I have no need. I love only myself and vow to kill all threats to my existence. It's the only validation I need. Gaara waited to hear the empty-headed retort about the value of love. How will you know you aren't a brain in a vat? Naruto asked. What? If you isolate yourself, how do you know all of reality, as you experience it is real? You could be a brain in a vat, and this is just a simulation. Or a complex genjutsu. You'd just be killing fictional people. So, you wouldn't have validated anything, really? Gaara stared at the Uzumaki in complete silence. He had no response. He didn't know how to feel about the leaf Nina at all. Was he real? Was this all fake? How could he possibly know? Could anything be known? What even is knowledge? If this were all some simulation, why have people hate him? Why have his family abandoned and try to kill him? Gaara felt unmoored as he returned to his room holding his head. Mother was still silent, so he was alone with his thoughts for the first time ever. As he entered the room, he saw his brother and sister. Or were they? The room was spinning and Gaara felt unwell. As he slumped down on the floor, he could only ask his siblings one question. Am I real? Naruto didn't think much of Gaara's hasty exit. He, too, disliked much of the philosophy he read as he found it ponderous and unsuited to falsification. When his Ajisen posed that problem to Naruto, he thought about it for several days. When he finally responded, he said that whether reality was simulated or not was moot as it was real to him, as he had no way to break free. As such, it made sense to simply accept this shared reality, as he lacked the ability to stop things existing with just his own volition. He recalled his Ajisen smiling and telling him it was a good answer. Now, however, a different sort of philosophical problem vexed Naruto, and he wished it was easily resolved as the last. The block likely held the key to progress that had been long delayed. But conceptually, he simply couldn't accept the premise. Things either are or they are not. The cat cannot be both alive and dead simply because no one knows it. That's not how things work. He wondered how his father managed to accept such absurdity. As I am sure you know, it is time to nominate teams to participate in the Chunin exams, Hiruzen stated to the room of collected Jounin sensei. Each high ninja listened to their leader while also looking at the stats of their students, the security checks having progressed enough to give even the genin their own Fuin bracelets. Because Hiruzen had objective measures, he was able to instill some baseline requirements. If the genin weren't at a certain level of fitness and mental capability, then they could not be considered, and those Jounin sensei weren't invited to the meeting. The Hokage was somewhat surprised all three of the rookie teams managed to meet the cutoff, though Team 10 just barely passed. Still, it would be a good showing if several clan heirs did well in the exams. And, of course, his grandson. He hadn't gone this long without seeing Naruto-kun and the old man miss their talks. As he waited for each Jounin to announce their decision, he noticed HS Ninja, while giving him due attention, were all shooting looks at Kakashi. Hiruzen could not blame them as the infamous tardy ninja arrived early. Curbing his tardiness was one of the many changes Kakashi displayed since his last mission and return. Tsunade, using Naruto's initial report, confirmed that Kakashi was experiencing a chemical imbalance, but not just from the Sharingan. Kakashi was clinically depressed, and by all appearances had been for years. Tsunade lost it. The procedure for diagnosing depression was well known, and while mental illness was a taboo among the general ninja corps, the same should hold true for medics. After figuring out a treatment regimen for Kakashi, she mandated a continuing education seminar for the entire medical staff on psychiatric medicine. While Kakashi was still adjusting to the medication, the man was becoming an active participant in his life again. Training a little more, going out with the other rookie sensei, and Guy, and no longer standing in front of the memorial stone were just a few of the behavioral alterations. Hiruzen was glad to see the young man doing better, but wished he'd been more diligent in getting Kakashi help instead of letting him work through his grief. That had been the wrong way. Hiruzen resumed his focus, not surprised the rookie sensei nominated their teams. It makes sense to take advantage of the home field advantage, and while Hiruzen doubted all of them were ready to be Chunin, the exams could highlight areas they needed to work on and introduce them to a level of pressure and conflict they may not have been exposed to. The Sandaime dismissed all present, save Kakashi. Naruto-kun returns today. Whichever iteration of your team shows up, you have necessary dispensation, the Sarutobi leader informed his ninja. Understood, Hokage-sama. I highly doubt the entirety of my team won't show up, Kakashi reassured. And about that other thing? I still believe you do not need to pull Naruto from Team 7 permanently. They don't have the cohesion of other teams, but they can develop it given time, and if Naruto makes Chunin, he can lead them as a triad while I do something else. I understand, Kakashi. It gives no pleasure to do this to your team, but with Orochimaru's interest and the Akatsuki, I can't have Naruto distracted with interpersonal matters. It also may be a bad idea to have our Jinchuuriki with the sole loyal Uchiha on one team. They make prime assassination targets, especially as Naruto's heritage is becoming more known. I'd die before I let something happen to them. Admirable, but I'd rather avoid that being necessary. You have many years ahead of you, Kakashi. Your task is to look for reasons to live, not die. Not until you're old and can do so surrounded by those that love you. That's a good death. Yes, Hokage-sama, Kakashi answered, leaving once dismissed. Kurenai arrived at Team 8's training grounds, instantly gaining her students' attention. Hinata and Shino waited silently, but her brash student couldn't help but speak. "You're late, Kurenai-sensei," he remarked while petting Akamaru. "Yes, I am, Kiba-kun. Hokage-sama requested an audience with me and several others. During this meeting, I nominated you for the Chunin exams. Here are your forms," she explained. "Whoa, really? You think we're ready to be Chunin?" Kiba asked. Kurenai had anticipated the question and was therefore ready with an answer. "Do I believe any of you are ready to fulfill the totality of the responsibilities of being a Chunin? No. But if that were the standard, most people wouldn't be Chunin until their 20s. It is a position you learn and grow into. Do I believe each of you have some of the skills necessary to allow you to survive and flourish as Chunin? Yes. And I certainly believe you have the skills to do well during these exams. I would not have nominated you if I didn't." Each student nodded, feeling more confident about attempting the promotional exam. "Now you each have a week to decide if this is for you, and if you decide it is not, there is no harm done. I will tell you, each rookie team and Mato Guy's Team 9 has also been nominated, so keep that in mind. Any questions?" Her 3 students answered in the negative. "Well, no training or missions for the rest of the week. Follow the instructions on the applications if you decide to retire." Saying her piece, Kurenai departed. Asuma's arrival awoke his 2 ninja, and he almost decided against telling them about the nomination. Ino was hanging upside down from a tree branch doing sit-ups. Her transformation had been surprising and gratifying. Seeing how much she'd progressed in just a few months made him wish he'd pushed them harder from the start. On paper, the Sarutobi knew his was the weakest team in terms of straight combat, but he hoped their teamwork would pull them through. "You've been nominated for the Chunin exams. They start in exactly 1 week. If you want to participate, follow the directions on the applications." "Troublesome, do we have to?" "No. This is optional, Shikamaru, but most genin consider it an honor to be nominated. Especially as a rookie. Team activities are suspended for the time being. Good luck." Sasuke barely paid attention to Kakashi when he informed them about the Chunin exams or that Naruto would be back to take it with them. He didn't care about a nominal promotion. Rising up the ranks wasn't one of his goals. But the exams could show how much he's improved or challenge him to grow even stronger. He knew they were not a normal team, and there was a reason Naruto was the one pulled away. It was a sign the Hokage, Kakashi, or both thought Naruto was so ahead of them that they held him back. That realization burned the Uchiha to his core, as his pride was one of the few pillars he had to prop himself up. That very pride had been shaken during his time as a genin. Not only Naruto outshining him but also almost dying. That he'd been willing to sacrifice his life and his dream for a teammate didn't surprise him, but it put into sharp relief if he didn't get better quickly he may not live to face Itachi. A part of him wondered if being on a team had made him less diligent, more comfortable with the status quo. He had to get revenge, to bring Itachi to justice. But he would not become like Itachi in order to do so. That meant he had to get stronger, and the Chunin exams was just the place to do so. Sakura was in the midst of a surprising revelation of her own. Not until Kakashi-sensei assured them that Naruto would take the exam with them did she feel confident enough to truly try. She didn't think she was ready to be a Chunin, but felt she could do well with her entire team. It was weird. Her feelings for Sasuke-kun had been such strong motivation that it initially puzzled her. But she was too smart to stay unaware, conclusions coming as swiftly as the questions that spurred them. She admired Sasuke-kun, believed in him. But she also realized his mentality was one that took on challenges head-on, committed to overcoming them with his abilities. This meant if you weren't up to his level, then his way could leave you out of your depths. She didn't think he was indifferent to her welfare. Him jeopardizing his life to save her is testament to that. He simply didn't consider the consequences of his approach. Naruto was different. He looked for ways to make every situation more favorable to him, to the team. His primary weapon was his intellect. Problems were broken down, recontextualized, or reshaped until he had the greatest advantage. She felt much more secure with that approach. He wasn't weak, but he didn't seek every instance to prove his strength. Sasuke-kun may lay down his life for her, but Naruto would do his best to make sure it didn't come to that, and ultimately, she didn't want a martyr. The two boys presented such stark paths to be a ninja, and she didn't feel she was close to either, skill-wise. But where Sasuke-kun's way made that reality glaringly obvious, Naruto's was more inclusive. She didn't feel useless, just not quite there yet. She hoped Sasuke-kun would listen to Naruto if the situation called for it. She hoped she'd have the courage to back Naruto if it came to it. Baki waited for his check-in to be completed. Waited and watched. Konoha had a reputation for being the good and kind shinobi village. It was pure hogwash, uncut propaganda meant to drum up business. Every other ninja village knew this, accepted it as holy writ that Konoha lies. And yet, it is so easy to be lured by that lie, seduced by its simple charms. Baki had been so worried about Jiraiya he didn't even pay attention to the younger ninja with him. But how could he know Jiraiya was assigned a team of demons? Oh, those blank faces hid their true nature well, but Baki was a seasoned veteran. He'd seen evil, done worse, and knew the depths of human depravity had no bottom. But at least everything he'd ever done gave his victims a fighting chance. Not these devils. One conversation is all it took to turn his violently psychopathic Jinchuuriki into a dyed-in-the-wool nihilist unconvinced anything around him mattered. Baki would never forget the experience of being pulled from sleep by a wild-eyed Gaara informing him God was dead, and that they had collective killed him. He didn't even know Gaara believed in God. Broken. The blonde devil broke Gaara. Then there was Kankuro. The once cocksure youth was depressed over the kunoichi. In what must have been the most interesting deployment of a honeypot in shinobi history, the girl managed to seduce his student without actually showing the least bit of interest in him. This, too, had something to do with the blonde one. Constantly, Kankuro would look at the object of his affection, then at the small blonde before asking Temari. Him? In total denial. She would nod and Kankuro would sink further into his depression. The blonde had to be some TNI prodigy meant to mindfuck the competition before the exams. Those cold blue eyes were reminiscent of something, and Baki wondered if he buried the memory because it was simply too evil to remember. Lastly, was Temari. His sane, strong, dedicated, and sane kunoichi. She often made him proud, made her village proud. Baki thought she'd escaped the impact of the three devils. Her mental fortitude too high, her will too strong to fall for their games. But he'd been wrong. As the blonde, manipulation prodigy, worked her over right before his eyes. Temari-san, Naruto said, looking at the Suna kunoichi in the eyes. He really liked her eyes. Yes? I am aware you are here for the Chunin exams. Should you find yourself with a little free time, would you like to visit with me? He asked. Temari was a little surprised by the question. She hadn't thought she'd made that good of an impression when they talked. The Wind Mistress didn't know why, but she looked over to Haku to gauge her reaction and smothered a frown at what she saw. The not all that pretty girl was smiling as if it didn't matter if the Suna ninja spent time with Naruto, she couldn't possibly compete with Little Miss perfectly symmetrical over there. The silent arrogance was galling to Temari. Before she could answer, she was stopped by a screaming child. Nithriach Heian! Konohamaru yelled as he dove toward his brother, being caught midair. You're back! Yes, as I informed you I would be. Naruto answered and then positioned Kono-chan onto his back. Sorry, Temari-san, this is my little brother, Naruto explained. And Baki didn't bother to fight his grimace. Oh, the monkey god was thorough. Using Temari's strained relationship with Gaara to manipulate her was low, and by all appearances it worked. He saw the wistful look on her face, the unspoken regrets that pulled at his own sense of shame. Oh, so this is him? Yes. Kono-chan, this is Temari of Suna. Hi, Temari-san. I'm Konohamaru. Your eyes are really pretty, Kore. Baki didn't see how the interaction concluded, having to follow Jiraiya to the Hokage's tower, but he didn't need to. He hadn't prepared his team for this kind of combat, he didn't think he had to. Not yet. He'd been wrong. Baki wouldn't know how correct he was until hours later in their hotel room when Gaara, waving around an infamous orange book, demanded they have the talk. He really needed that vacation. Chapter 16. Baki stood over his students. The past 7 days had been trying. He hadn't been prepared for the mind games Konoha employed, and he took full responsibility, just as he was responsible for minimizing the effects. The results had been minimal. The easiest? Temari. The girl had some lingering insecurities around her forced isolation. In another context, she would be quite popular and highly sought after, but she barely had any friends and no boy had ever expressed interest. While, objectively, she understood she was not to blame for her situation, there were still those quiet whispers in her mind telling her she simply wasn't pretty enough, good enough to garner attention. When the little, blonde demon gave her a taste and a rival, Temari leapt without realizing she'd even done so. He explained as much and was confident she understood until he saw her leave their hotel room twice, each time wearing the faintest hint of makeup and dressed for an evening out. There was also her asking him if he thought her eyes were enchanting. Baki explained he was old enough to be her father, and in no way wanted to answer that question. Next was Kankuro. The boy had taken to stalking the little, blonde demon. Baki advised him it was a waste of time, that he wasn't in love with the honeypot he was exposed to. It was a distraction, and if he were going to gather intel he should try to find out information about the competition, not some chunin brat. Kankuro disregarded him, needing to uncover the mystery of the boy that vexed him. After several days of following the boy, Kankuro concluded that there was something about that kid and hot broads. While most of Kankuro's information was useless, the one relevant bit of information sent Baki into a full-on panic attack. Tsunade Senju was back in the village. 2 of the 3 Sannin resided in the village. And whereas Jiraiya could be reasoned with, Tsunade was a calamity made flesh. He truly considered turning missing Nin, only for an instance, but he had to at least ponder the option. He didn't want to be exploded by a punch. Was that so unreasonable? Knowing both her and Jiraiya were in the village caused Baki to start smoking again after 10 years of abstaining. Lastly, was Gaara. In truth, Baki didn't even know where to begin. The Jinchuuriki didn't behave like a psychotic all the time. But he also felt all of reality was a meaningless void you endured until death claimed you. What was the Suna man supposed to work toward here? The only thing that did interest Gaara was supple ripe fruit, as they were the path to something real, even if it was fleeting. Baki told the boy that killing his enemies was akin, an experience shared between individuals. Gaara said mother agreed and Baki left it at that. So here he was. Top man of Suna. Proud Jounin. The supposed leader of the invasion's vanguard, and his team is mindfucked 2 ways from Sunday while his nerves are so frayed he's not sure he cares anymore. The actual invasion might be less stressful, Baki reasoned. He sent his team off, knowing they were going to do what they were going to do, and he reported to the sensei lounge to watch the first exam. Several moments later, it was Kakashi standing over his team. His team. It was as if he were seeing them with clear eyes, for the first time. His kunoichi, a great amount of talent if she only find her path. He sometimes feels bad for Sakura, cursed to be normal on a team of unusuals. Their problematic C-ranks had given her a false impression of her skills. She was better than she realized, and he hoped the exams would show her that so she could move forward, confidently. Next was Uchiha Sasuke. What many would consider the talent, the future leader, the one meant to stand above his other teammates due to his natural genius. While Kakashi never bothered to call him out, he knew even Sasuke, deep down, believed this too. He didn't fault the Sharingan wielder, so many of the shinobi arts came easily to him. Smart, strong, fast with an admirable work ethic. Slowly, Sasuke was being moved from his singular obsession with killing Itachi. Their last mission had him backslide, but progress was still being made. It would take time. As more and more events humbled and matured the Uchiha Scion, he would come to see the value of his teammates. These exams would hopefully be a step in the right direction. Lastly, the chosen one. Chibi. Uzumaki Naruto. Kakashi knew he had to keep Naruto on his team as the fun was just about to begin. Once Chunin, Kakashi could teach the Uzumaki so much cool stuff. Like how to drop a target in a crowded room and be gone before the body's temperature fell. Or how to remove a brow with just your teeth, the same way Minato-sensei taught him. In truth, Kakashi should not train genin. His time in ANBU had warped his sense of everything. But Chibi got him, and Kakashi didn't want to miss out on all the great things they could do. But if this were their last Hari, then Kakashi was glad he suggested an alteration to Naruto's uniform. Everyone would know he was the student of Hatake Kakashi. As his trio of students looked at him expectantly, Kakashi cleared his mind and decided to give them a pep talk. "Don't embarrass me," he said with a nice smile. 2 of his students looked put out at his shitty speech, but Chibi chuckled. Kakashi rubbed the blonde's hair in a show of appreciation and shunshined away. Chibi got him because Chibi was cool. Naruto trailed behind his teammates as they entered the classroom. It was common for genin teams to have a leader from the trio of lone ninja, and while Kakashi-sensei never designated who that would be on their team, Sasuke-san was easier to manage if he were treated as such. Walking ahead of them, even as he seemed indifferent, was one of those things. As the Uzumaki walked through the door, he was instantly hit with something he knew to be killing intent. He didn't really feel threatened. After having a similar experience when he was little while watching a mother bear protect her cub, Naruto asked his Aji-san what that sensation was. His Aji-san went on to explain killing intent, and Naruto simply didn't understand the point. It gave your location away and marked you as a threat. His Aji-san said it was a way to demoralize lesser ninja, to weaken their resolve as they became overwhelmed. To Naruto, it just felt like someone decided to scream in his face. Hardly a thing to be demoralized over, but a good way to receive a punch on the nose. His Aji-san had to explain annoyance that day. Naruto quickly dismissed the sensation and the poor attempt at intimidation. He couldn't track the logic of enemies reinforcing they were, in fact, enemies, but he left the unknown genin to their weirdness. His team was already talking to their cohort, and Naruto would join, but he had to make a quick stop. "Hello, Temari-san," Naruto greeted. Her brothers frowned at him, and Naruto wondered if this was similar to Ino-chan's dad. As Tsunade-sensei said, it wasn't really his business, then Naruto speaking to Temari-san wasn't theirs. He dismissed them as he awaited a response. "Hi, Naruto. You didn't tell me you were competing in the exams. That wasn't very nice," she teased. "I figured with Kankuro-san following me you already knew and were attempting to gain intel. I felt no need to restate what I assumed you already knew," Naruto responded, ignoring the puppet user's shock at having been discovered. "Well, I must depart," Naruto said. He joined his team, the sounds of Inuzuka Kiba-san bragging about his, and his team's, training meeting his ears before his arrival. The dog user saw Naruto's approach and felt the need to rope him into his spiel. "Oh, if it isn't Naruto. Hey, buddy, almost didn't see you there. Hope you're ready to get your butt kicked," Kiba taunted. Naruto understood the boy liked to engage in such exchanges, and Hinata-chan had requested Naruto befriend her teammates when given the chance. But he wasn't incredibly familiar with the formulation of these kinds of boasts. He understood they should elevate the speaker over the target, and not be gratuitous in their description. Naruto would have really preferred to just stare at the boy until he stopped talking so Naruto could pet Akamaru, and then find his seat, but he'd all but promised Hinata-chan. "Hello, Kiba-san. As you lack Hinata-chan's battle prowess and Shino-san's intellect, your challenging me would only be one by definition, a futile attempt with one pre-selected outcome. I hope to embarrass you enough that Akamaru wishes to reside with me afterward, as he seems like a good dog in need of a quality partner." "Dude, what the hell?" Kiba asked after a moment of silence. Naruto looked around to see several faces displaying an emotion he couldn't peg. "I thought we were exchanging playful jibes in a show of camaraderie. Is that not what we were doing? I believe your jibe, as you called it, was too thorough and much closer to the truth than a light-hearted attempt should be. In the future, I recommend you stay more general as to not cause offense," Shino explained. "Thank you, Shino-san. You're already being troublesome, Naruto," Shikamaru observed. Naruto eyed the Naro, as he decidedly did not like the boy. During the academy, when Naruto attempted to befriend the Nara and his Akimichi friend, the future shadow user simply said it'd be too troublesome, as if Naruto's very being was simply onerous by its mere existence. Naruto didn't like that feeling. Sure, many of the villagers ignored him, or whispered when they thought they couldn't hear him, but few ever verbalized he was some kind of annoyance. Naruto never bothered to converse with the Nara again outside of the mandates of the academy, which were few and far between. "So is a tracheal rupture, Nara-san." Any retort Shikamaru was going to have that response was stopped by Ino's acknowledgement that Naruto was there, having finally come back from Sasuke land. "Naruto-kun," she exclaimed, not having seen the Uzumaki since his departure from the village. "Why do you let billboard brow hang all over Sasuke-kun? I thought we were friends," Ino said with a faux whine. "Hello, Ino-chan. You look well. Don't I? And look at you with the face mask. Dressing like your sensei?" Hataki-sensei suggested it for the exams, said I would look cool. "Mission accomplished. If only I could get you out of those orange jackets," Ino lamented. He'd be open to wearing clothes, she suggested, but his mission outfit always included orange. Ino thought the boy could be a real cutie if he just let go of the fascination he had with that color. It simply didn't compliment him, or make his eyes pop. "I like orange." "I like orange too. I also like your whisker marks. I hope you won't cover them up permanently," Hinata said, finally joining the conversation. She had to take some calming breaths when she saw Naruto's new alteration. That Hataki bastard was messing with the universal cuteness quotient, and she promised to have a talk with him later. Those whiskered cheeks were hers and not to be hidden away. The rookies continued to talk until a tall, stern-looking man entered the room and ordered they get to their assigned seats. It was time for the first exam to begin. In the sensei lounge, Baki watched as the source of all his anxiety walked into the testing area. He, irrationally, wanted to send a wind blade through the screen in hopes it'd somehow cut the little demon. Every village uses Chunin plants, that was nothing of note. But in just a few moments the blonde devil tried to mindfuck his team again, trying to extend his seduction of Temari, making Gaara feel invisible, thereby furthering his belief that he wasn't real and none of this had meaning, and convincing Kankuro any intel the boy gathered was just one long manipulation and a sincere waste of time. Konoha, Baki believed, was a nest of vipers that came for your sanity so you'd do their dirty work for them. As he watched Ibiki Marino, the demon's likely sensei, enter the room, he quickly realized this exam was going to be about mental fortitude. Ninja life was cruel, but no other village exposed genin to their chief torturer. He needed a smoke. He was in a village of sick fucks that liked to torture kids and then teach those kids how to torture other kids. As the exam got underway, it didn't take long for most to understand they were meant to cheat. Most of the attempts were only passable if you remembered they were genin. His team was doing fine, so that's all that really mattered. He did notice Naruto, name given to imply he's human, stared at the head proctor for several minutes before leaving his chair and approaching the man. That confused Baki. A Chunin plant shouldn't call attention to himself. Then Baki heard something that made him pale. "Kakashi, what is your student doing?" a feminine voice asked. The boy alleged was the student of Hatake Kakashi? The Hatake Kakashi? Last living student of the kill-happy Yondaime Hokage? The boy, or so he appeared, was an actual genin? And this village sicked him on his competition like an assassin's blade? Baki really needed a smoke. "Something cool, Kurenai." "Something cool," was Kakashi's response, but Baki was long past caring about the conversation. The genin, because Baki didn't believe a lone ninja would be assigned to a sannin for any reason, began an exchange with Ibiki. He started by placing down an envelope, which Ibiki picked up and inspected the contents. After that, the exchange continued as for several minutes the two talked about something. At one point, Ibiki held up 3 fingers. The blonde shook his head in the negative and held up 2. The large man relented and the blonde put down another, fatter envelope and 2 baggies of what appeared to be some kind of snack mix. Ibiki handed over a slip of paper, shook the blonde's hand and then ordered no one to leave their seats unless expelled or otherwise given permission. "Did he just bribe Ibiki for the answers?" the son of the monkey god asked. Baki turned to the Konoha Jounin now, needing confirmation for what he just saw. He watched as Kakashi favored the entire room with an eye smile and said, Yes, he did. That is pretty cool." The blonde Kumo Jounin responded before really looking at the objection of discussion. "Mabui-san, isn't that the boy you ran into a few days ago?" "Yes, I believe that is him," she answered with a slight blush. Baki recognized the 2 women, Samui and Mabui, 2 top kunoichi of Kumo. What could the beguiling devil had done to an experienced ninja to cause that reaction? Baki put it out of his mind, hoping that if the genin were focused on Kumo he'd finally leave his team alone and maybe the invasion vanguard might start acting like it again. The exam continued and Ibiki ratcheted up the pressure until no one was unaffected, except him. Then, the real mindfuck happened. Ibiki threatened to make them lifelong genin if they continued on with the final question and failed. In no other context would any of them believe that nonsense. It was such an obvious lie, Baki thought, that he might as well have said he'd named the next Tsuchikage. But the genin, subjected to a type of psychological pressure they'd never experienced, didn't have it in them to reject the false premise. Too many were simply too scared to continue and relieved they had an out. Ibiki's lie didn't matter because all they wanted was an escape. Baki could appreciate the tradecraft, acknowledging that Marino was an artist, as the silence stretched but the time for a decision dwindled, more and more teams left. By the time Ibiki called it, not even half the teams were left. Before the large man could finish his explanation, a kunoichi blurred through the window, announcing herself as the sexy and single Anko Mitarashi. Baki, once again, wondered why the exams were proctored by Konoha's top torturers. That couldn't have been an accident. Baki saw the son of the Sandaime walk toward a patio while grabbing for his smokes. The Suna ninja was filled with the desire to join him. If they were in Suna, he'd have no problem, but outside the village is different. It can signal weakness, a lack of confidence in his team and relief they managed to pass the first test. But erecting a mask was just as revealing to the keen and studied eye. Appearing calm and being calm were not the same. Appearing confident can read like insecurity. Even what you choose to disguise you reveals something crucial, patterns of thought or self-acknowledged weak points. Baki didn't think he'd be in the game, too. He'd allowed himself to believe Konoha had gone soft, resting on the reputation of a few powerful ninja. He was underprepared, caught flat-footed and trying his best not to overcorrect. He just couldn't shake the feeling Konoha knew more than they were letting on, and Suna was marching into a carefully laid trap. "You'll either hunt or you'll die, fatty," Enko answered the Akimichi. It was rude and unprofessional, but Sakura was more focused on something else. Her Uzumaki teammate seemed off, tense. She'd never seen him tense. He hadn't been initially, not until the proctor gave them the scrolls. She questioned if she really were seeing what she believed she was. It wasn't like it was a 180 transformation. Naruto seemed tense for him, his eyes seemed a little harder. Maybe he was finally nervous about the exams since he likely couldn't cheat on this one. Maybe the receiving of the scrolls made it real to him. The proctor had explained this next exam. Each team was handed 2 scrolls, a normal-sized one labeled either Heaven or Earth and a small, black scroll we are only to open once inside the forest. As Team 7 walked to their positions, Sakura wanted to ask Naruto if he were alright but didn't know if that'd make things worse. She knew he didn't process things like she did and maybe he was in the middle of dealing with it. "One last thing, try not to die," Enko yelled as the sirens blared. The second exam had begun. Enko watched the genin squads rush into the notorious forest with an anticipatory smile. It only grew when she sensed someone behind her, his landing having been impressively quiet for his rank. She turned to be greeted by Naruto and a Fuinjutsu array spreading on the ground, trapping her. Body rigid and paralyzed but smiled just as wide, she looked at the kunai-wielding genin. "Where is Enko-chan?" "Kakuku, how did you know I wasn't really her?" Orochimaru asked. Naruto wouldn't answer the imposter, but he knew Enko-chan well enough to know she never called him Naruto-kun. Nor did she insult people based on their physical appearance, but this fake didn't need to know that. Naruto placed his kunai to the fraud's left femoral artery. "I will not ask again. She's in the forest with me, Naruto-kun. The real me. She put up quite the fight. I was so very proud of my former student, until I saw my mark had been removed from her. I'll have to punish her for allowing that to happen, but maybe you can get to her in time. Maybe. Tell me where you are and I'll be on my way." "TSK, TSK, TSK. No, see, this is the problem, Naruto-kun. You have the purest, most wonderful gift, but you don't honor it. You don't enjoy it, and I simply can't accept that. No, if you want to save Enko-chan, you're going to have to find me. This is now my test, and I don't grade on a scale. I trust you will impress me, Naruto-kun. Per Enko-chan might not survive if you don't." Naruto pushed the kunai into the artery, dispelling the clone. He then dissolved into a cloud of smoke, revealing himself to have been a clone as well. Back in the Forest of Death, the rookie Konoha teams, plus Team Guy, were trying to absorb the information found on the Black Scroll. There was confusion, fear, concern, and other strong emotions being provoked by the document. With Team Guy, Lee and Niji looked at Tenten in confusion. None of them knew why this would be happening or if everything written was true. Over on Team 10, Shikamaru was trying to come up with the best way to get out of the forest as fast as possible. The danger level had increased 100-fold, as far as he was concerned. Teammates simply stared at the bloodthirst grin on Hinata's face as she muttered about the lioness going on the hunt. However, it was Team 7 that had the most dumbfounded members, as Sasuke and Sakura watched Naruto in disbelief. Even before his clone expelled, once he got the scroll from a silent and wide-eyed Sakura, Naruto changed out of his orange jacket and into his vest. He'd altered it so he could carry his 2 eskrima sticks. A tanto across the small of his backside showed him how to use an Akai Ketsu Shogue he learned how to wield from his summons. The front of the vest had 2 sealing scrolls on either pec and a number of storage seals containing surplus weapons. He took off his thigh holster, opening the top. "Sakura-san, put your thumb here and channel some chakra," Naruto requested. She did just that and was finally brought back to reality when she felt Naruto's hand on her upper thigh. Sakura blushed but fought back the scream, not wanting to alert anyone to their location. Naruto had his holster strapped to her in no time. "Sakura-san, that holster contains my emitter discs, and they've been primed to your chakra signature. Tiger seal causes an explosion. Rat paralysis. Snake flashbang. Bird snapback. The larger the pulse, the greater the effect and the longer the delay." Their edges are incredible sharp, so throw them like you would a shuriken as they can penetrate. Why are you explaining this like you won't be with us? I won't. The person who hijacked the exam has my friend and I'm going to get her. Then we'll go get her together, Naruto. Sakura countered, only to receive a shake of Naruto's head. He's far beyond anyone in this exam, and to even have a chance I'll have to use some really destructive techniques you haven't seen, so I can't anticipate your placement or reactions. Besides, someone needs to get to the Jounin sensei and alert them. Sasuke-san, and you are good enough to do that. Sasuke-kun, you can't agree with him, can you? I don't know what to think, the Uchiha said. He'd just been hit with some mind-altering information. Are you sure you can do this? No. I will very likely die in the attempt, but that knowledge frees me from certain limitations. You too there reintroduces them. If you think you'll die, then why go? This man has likely killed my friend, but on the off chance he has not, I must play his game to have any chance to extract her. If he has already killed her, I will do all I can to kill him. I'll die in the attempt. I am confident you two will complete the exam and make it to the central tower. Please inform them Orochimaru of the Sannin is in the forest and has a potential hostage named Midarashi Anko. I have delayed as long as I wish to, the Uzumaki said as he started to walk away from his team for what could be the final time. Sakura couldn't help but think he seemed so much taller right then, shoulders a little more broad. She readjusted slightly, and the new weight on her thigh drew her attention to one of his possible final acts. Even as he steeled himself for an impossible task, he left her with the means to better protect herself. He cared. She wanted to make him promise to come back alive, to somehow win, but she wouldn't dishonor these last few moments. He would endure, no false promises were needed. She'd simply believe this wasn't the end. He vanished into the trees, leaving 2/3 of Team 7 to try and make sense of the last several minutes. Such a radical change in their expectations, either paid attention to the scroll that seemingly started it all. The little black slip, now discarded on the forest floor. Neither having gotten a chance to ask about the most startling revelation, as the scroll read, as an added stipulation to this year's exam, for Konoha genin have been selected as VIPs. If you manage to kill one of these VIPs and show proof of death in the central tower, you will be rewarded accordingly. 10-10 of Team Guy 1. 5 million Ryo Yamanaka Ino, heiress of the Yamanaka clan 2. 5 million Ryo Hyuga Hinata, heiress of the Hyuga clan. 4 million Ryo Uzumaki Naruto, son of the Yondaime Hokage, the Yellow Flash, Namake's Minato. 10 million Ryo. Chapter 17. This isn't right, Tenden said in disbelief, her voice uncharacteristically soft. There was no way her village would put a price on her or her fellow ninjas' heads. Something was wrong, very wrong. Even in the darkened forest, surrounded by trees that seemed to stretch to the heavens, she couldn't mistake what was written on that scroll. I agree, this is most unyouthful. Should we alert the proctor? Lee asked, his manner much more subdued than normal. Niji activated his Byakugan and then shook his head. Once we agreed to participate in the second exam, any help they'd give us was gone. But I agree, 10-10. Something is amiss, but the Chunin exams are not minor things. The Great Five and even the minor shinobi villages must agree on their rules. No outside help or contact. Unless the proctor or the Hokage tells us the exam is over, we must proceed as if this was part of the plan. Niji, there is a price on my head, 10-10 barked. Yes, for this exam you are in the bingo book. Or that's a feasible enough complication for us to endure. But the 4 selected out of all available participants. They choose the 4 friends and no one else? And reveal Naruto-kun is the son of the Yondaime? That is not random selection, Lee argued. Someone is targeting or sending a message to one or several of the people on that scroll. Likely Naruto, he has the highest price and the most damning information shared. Someone wants him dead, Tenten said. Or motivated. Either way, we must complete the exam and get to the central tower. It's our best chance to resolve things or find help, Niji concluded. His teammates nodded and all took to the trees. Silently, Tenten hoped her new friends would be okay and come out of this hole. It wasn't supposed to be like this, the nameless genin thought. His team and he were going to do their village proud, show up Konoha and prove that smaller villages were not to be dismissed. He believed fate had smiled upon him when he learned the Yellow Flash had a son, and he was in these exams. He remembered the short, quiet blonde. The kid didn't look that tough. He stared into the sky, forced to lie on his back as his vision continued to darken. He was cold, so cold. It was the only thing he could feel. He hadn't sensed his assailant until the blade penetrated his back, severing his spinal cord. He couldn't even see his killer but could hear the screams of his teammates, and then silence. He tried to will his body to do anything, for his consciousness to remain, but he was powerless. He couldn't even flinch when the ground below him started to move or when a pair of hands started to pull him into the earth. Naruto took the headbands of the ninja he just assassinated. He created a trio of clones, each transforming into a member of the fallen squad and putting on the corresponding headbands. This way, any trackers could still trace their scent and would be less suspicious should they run into the disguised clones. He'd already created dozens of clones to spread out into the forest. Running into a team personally had just been an unhappy accident. He didn't like playing Orochimaru's game, but his Aji-san kept the secret of his heritage to protect him. Naruto wouldn't allow that to be undone. It may be his last act, but he'd make sure there were very few who could share the information disseminated by that traitor. A quick glow of his fingertip, touching just behind his ear, and his communicator seal was reapplied. At his Aji-san's request, he'd removed it for the exams. At the time, Naruto said it was a pointless gesture, as he memorized all his seals, but his Aji-san said it was necessary, so he complied. Seeking outside help meant he'd be disqualified, but it didn't matter. He sent out an alert but received no response. He knew Haku was out of the village on Uzumaki business, and was grateful. She was strong, but refusing to kill in this scenario would have put her at risk. He assumed Jiraiya and Orsai, however, would still be here. Quickly opting for an alternative, Naruto summoned a small, red toad. "Kosuke-san," Naruto greeted. "Hey there, Naruto. What can I do for you?" "I need you to go to the Hokage's tower and warn my Aji-san that Orochimaru has infiltrated the Forest of Death and taken Amaterasu Enko-chan hostage. And you're going to stay here until he comes with reinforcements?" Kosuke asked. "No. He claims this is a challenge for me. If I don't come or come with backup, then Enko-chan will be killed, if she hasn't already." Kosuke didn't try to persuade his newest summoner any further and simply took off at top speed. Once gone, Naruto activated his tracker seals and saw two blips just minutes away. It meant Orochimaru had at least two of those elites with him, but Naruto didn't know which ones. He noted that as an oversight that would need to be corrected. Naruto drew blood from his thumb one more time, summoning two toads, Gamashiro and Gamashira. A brother-sister pair that were just a little taller than him. Shiro was green with white flecks and Shiro was solidly orange. Naruto explained what he needed, a 1 and possibly 2-person extraction. The two were good at stealth and very fast. If given a proper opening, they could get Enko and flee to safety. It wasn't a plan, but was as good as he was going to do with limited information. Silently, Naruto leapt into the trees and began his final approach. "Orochimaru-sama," Kadamura stated, gaining the attention of his master. The spider-esque ninja sat atop his summons, there having not been enough time to fully fix his spine. "Someone stepped on one of my threads just southeast of here." The alert was greeted with a smile. "Kukuku, do we think our guest has arrived?" Orochimaru asked from the tree branch, looking over his minions, Enko beside him constricted by a large, green snake. He watched his second-in-command clench his prosthetic arm and frown. "It's him, Orochimaru-sama," Kabuto answered, his belief guided solely by the phantom pain he felt in his arm any time he thought of the Uzumaki. It was near unbearable now, but he'd enjoy making the blonde pay for mutilating him. It'd be slow and agonizing. "Then why not welcome him, Kabuto-kun? Take Yoro-kun and Masumi-kun with you," Orochimaru ordered, and the three ninja departed without a word. "Aren't you excited, Enko-chan?" the Sannin asked his former student, only receiving a death glare in response. After 5 minutes of high-speed travel, Yoroi finally got the nerve to ask Kabuto a question, intimidated by the bloodlust the medic was projecting in waves. "Kabuto, what can you tell us this kid? He utilizes seals and a passable intellect to make up for his lack of combat ability. The sound 5 and I took them down with little effort," Kabuto shared. "Now shut up before we give away our position," he ordered. "Too late," a disembodied voice said just as the curved blade of the Kaiketsushogue dug into Yoroi and pulled the traitor up, his screams filling the forest until moments later quiet returned. The remaining ninja of Team Kabuto were on high alert, not willing to be caught off guard again. They heard someone descending and were ready to respond. Except there was nothing to respond to. It was the body of Yoroi falling, only stopping when one of the sturdy branches beside him broke his fall, kunai inserted into the back of his head. Lack of combat ability, huh? Misumi asked, greatly annoying Kabuto. Their mutual slip in discipline made them ignorant to the flash-bang array applied to their departed teammate. Blinding light and a piercing screech was the last sensations Misumi would experience before he felt the cold blade of the Kaiketsushogue slide across his throat. Elevated in his position, the wound created an isolated blood shower within the forest of death, momentarily painting everything red as his life essence gushed out of him. He fell into the inky blackness of the forest floor, the canopy greedily consuming the sunlight. Rapidly recovering from the distraction, Kabuto peered at the genin at the end of their shared branch, the ringing just subsiding from his ears as he stood upright. The boy had a blank look, similar to Danzo's root. That the Uzumaki mirrored the agents of the man he hated most only fueled his loathing for the blonde. He activated his chakra scalpels, it taking a little more concentration for his prosthetic arm, and charged. Not even seeing the Uzumaki activate his own scalpels impeded his approach. Thrust, parry, swing were the primary motions as the two medics engaged in mortal combat. Even with their mutual healing factors, they each realized this was a fight with slim margins for error. Slowly, Kabuto started to push his foe back, his experience and superior skills starting to overwhelm the smaller, younger ninja. One slash, narrowly missing the heart, a follow-up nearing the lung. Victory was imminent, he could feel it in his bones. His confidence made him more aggressive and left him open for surprise. Naruto, seeing his opening, used a variant of chakra sticking to rotate around the branch, going under and around and channeling the inertia into a leg sweep. Swiftly, Naruto kicked off the branch to gain some distance from the silver-haired traitor. Kabuto, now in a crouched position, channeled chakra into his limbs, unwilling to allow his prey to escape. He dashed, blurring toward the still airborne Naruto, prepared and excited to end his life. But the Uzumaki showed his penchant for the unpredictable once more as a second, kunai-wielding, Naruto charted a path intercepting Kabuto's own. Waylaid again, and out of position, Kabuto had to accept the kunai being dug into his replacement limb as he mercilessly dispatched his assailant. Kabuto expected his attacker was a shadow clone and would dispel when he countered. He was correct. He assumed the multiple-purpose ninja weapon stuck in his arm would as well. He was wrong. The clone dispelling did, however, undo the genjutsu, cloaking the explosive note attached to the kunai. In a fit of primal instinct, the medic attempted to pull the kunai out, getting his sole original hand on the handle right as it exploded. Once more Kabuto experienced being maimed by the Uzumaki, the blinding pain not even allowing him to scream as he hit the ground with a bone-breaking thud. Through sheer force of will he managed to get to his knees. The explosion robbed him of his sight and hearing. He was healing, but it wouldn't be fast enough. Kabuto would never see the gleam. He would never heard the melody of swoosh and clang. Only for the briefest of moments would he feel the Kaiketsushogue blade as it rocketed toward him, having been pulled from behind. The real Naruto dropped the transparent escape jutsu as he turned away from the fallen ninja. His clone placed an incendiary tag on the remains. While he doubted it, Naruto didn't want to know if the medic could grow half his head back. He leapt back into the trees, taking no moment to savor his victory. His work wasn't done. Orochimaru, his hostage, and his 6 remaining followers heard faint sounds of combat. It was after the final explosion had been heard that the snake Sannin laughed, confusing several in attendance. Kukuku, I don't think our initial wave fared very well against Naruto-kun. What should we do now? He seemingly asked the heir. Wait and attack him together? Dosu cautiously put forward. That sounds like a wonderful idea, Dosu-kun. Keep impressing me and you might just earn a spot as one of my new elites. Sadly, only Kidamaru and Taiya remain. Such a tragedy what befell Kimimaro, isn't that right, Yugo-kun? Orochimaru asked. The boy, sitting at the base of a tree with tags restraining him, could only grunt. Orochimaru-sama, another of my threads were tripped. Kidamaru warned. He knew Kabuto wouldn't miss their placement. He couldn't say for the other two, but he suspected it was the Uzumaki. He took several steadying breaths as he balanced on top of his summons. Naruto, I have eyes on them. 7 hostiles in total and Anko is alive. Beat up but alive. Gamashira reported. Is there a multi-armed one with them? Nero asked. Yes, he's strapped to a large spider. She answered. Naruto stayed silent as he attempted to cobble together a plan, responding once he had one. He's an archer. I need one of you on him and the other on Anko. When I'd drawn his full attention enough to attack, then neutralize him, while the other snatches Anko. Once you secure the package, flee and do not return. I have 2 clones on standby to provide medical attention to you or Anko-chan. Bunta is going to kill us for this, Naruto," Shiro said, speaking for the first time. "I'm sorry for any trouble this causes you, but I am short on time and options. Well, no sense worrying about it now. I'm in position and Spider-Boy doesn't know," said Shiro. "I'm in position," Shiro confirmed. Acknowledged. Orochimaru could sense a change in the atmosphere. Finely honed instincts, sharpened over the decades, told him something would be happening soon, but he schooled his features. If his ninja couldn't tell, then this would either be a learning experience or a fatal error. He didn't even let on that he made the 2 cloaked summons. They were good, and it was no surprise Kadamura hadn't noticed he was at risk, but they weren't to the level of fooling a Sannin. The snake summoner wondered if he'd have to make Naruto break his contract with the toads once the blonde joined him. The snakes were morally flexible, but he found the toads to be rigid and sophomoric in their dispositions. An issue for another day, he reasoned as he watched Dosa send hurtling via a flying knee. 2 shuriken followed the downed boy, but he reacted in time to block the projectiles with his melody arm, each metallic weapon sinking deeply into unorthodox ninja tool. Zaku wasted no time retaliating with his decapitating airwaves, and all watched as the Uzumaki was cut down by the concentrated wind jutsu. Relieved and unobservant, it was only the interference of Sujetsu that saved Zaku as his claymore's blade intercepted Naruto's tanto, aiming to slash the unsuspecting genin's neck. Naruto kicked Zaku away and engaged the Hozuki. It didn't take long to reveal Sujetsu was the superior with his chosen weapon, disarming the Uzumaki. As he went for the kill, he was met with a Rasengan. Only his water transformation jutsu saved his life. Orochimaru watched as his future disciple had no time to process events as he dodged a pair of Saban, Kin finally having made a move. They missed, but it was as she planned, as Naruto's evasion put him right in the path of Dosa as he came in with a wide right hook. Showing his superior reflexes, Naruto rotated around Dosa's strike, ending up behind the ninja and stabbing him with the senban he retrieved from his vest. It was smooth but not enough, something even Dosa knew. "Got you," the boy bragged as he heard his target fall to the ground, likely suffering from a severe and sudden dizzy spell. While Dosa had time to boast, it would be his last act. The Sannin knew the placement of the senban well. It was called the Kiss of the Dragon, and Dosa would die in agony as the blood pooled to his brain before forcefully evacuating through his eyes, ears, nose, and mouth. It was why he could only listen to Naruto fall. He was paralyzed and well on his way to death. Orochimaru saw Kadamura knock his bow, taking the downed Uzumaki as a perfect target. So concentrated on the one that crippled him, he wasn't aware of the very real danger that stood to his side. More for entertainment than any impulse to save his former elite, Orochimaru flicked a piece of bark toward the archer. The speed made him duck, causing him to miss his shot while also receiving a cut above his right eye as simultaneously a dagger and a tongue sped toward his summons, dispelling it and grabbing Anko. Each toad took off as if their lives depended on it, and Orochimaru had to admit that should the wimp find him, they most certainly did. "Damn it, he got tipped off," Shiro complained, incredibly displeased he failed in his assigned task. "It's fine, just alert me when you're clear," Naruto said as he rolled from the claymore attempting to behead him. His dizziness was fast leaving him. It was fortuitous as he was able to perform a substitution with little discomfort. Razor-sharp wind blasts splintered the log that replaced him. Now hidden in the leaves again, Naruto took just a moment to allow the last of the damage to heal. He needed to finish up with the lower ninja quickly so he could concentrate. The swordsman did provide some difficulty, as the boy could seemingly avoid all physical damage. Naruto had an idea and, most importantly, a pre-existing seal he could modify instead of inventing one on the spot. The brief skirmish had provided him with some good intel on all but the one covered and restrained. It was time to go on the attack in earnest. Naruto's first target? The wind tunnel boy. A shunshin placed him right in front of him. Zaku was already in the process of lifting his arms, but his attack was stalled by Naruto's own. Kick to the inside of the right knee destabilized the Oto ninja. A back fist to the chin stunned him. A left cross to the neck filled him with blinding pain. A palm thrust to the chest finishing the striking portion as Naruto ended things with an one-armed, over-the-shoulder throw toward Kin. The kunoichi wisely jumped out of the way as the seal on Zaku glowed briefly before he was reduced to a pink mist. Kin avoided the blast but not the gore, as she dropped to her knees in shock. Naruto was on the move before Zaka ever exploded. The water bowl was next. Rasengan flaring, Naruto charged, near recklessly. Fuinjutsu, caught off guard by the blitz attempt, almost didn't have time to transform before the swirling chakra ball hit, but he did just in time as his lower body became pure liquid. Smiling as he flowed around Naruto, he gripped his claymore prepared to end the fight. So committed to the killing strike he disregarded the bead tossed by Naruto. Kukuku, Orochimaru laughed as he watched the Hozuki become an ice sculpture. He wondered if he'd be able to thaw the boy, but all plans were dashed when he watched Naruto perform a spinning heel kick and take off Suigetsu's head. The Oto leader was impressed Naruto managed a counter to Suigetsu's most useful ability. Kidamaru, knowing he was next, wisely used his next arrow to free Yugo from the last of his restraint seals. Yugo, fully enraged and transformed, hit Naruto full-on with a chakra jet-boosted punch. The Uzumaki hit the trunk of a tree hard, nearly going through it. Yugo followed, his right hand transformed into an axe ready to cleave the murderer of his only friend. He swung and felt his weapon sink into something. Even enraged, he knew it wasn't a human body. That his victim managed to substitute himself before he received justice only enraged Yugo more. He looked around and saw nothing. Heard nothing. Sensed nothing. It was infuriating. Yugo hit the ground, causing fissures to appear. It wasn't his enemy, but it was an outlet, so he hit the ground again. And again. Hard enough to start to break up the ground. Lifting his hands to strike the ground once more, Naruto's staff broke through, hitting Yugo in the throat. Annoyed more than hurt, the transformed ninja was going to bat the staff away but was stopped by a concentrated shock that coursed through his body. His opponent stunned and paralyzed, Naruto returned above ground and swung the other end of his staff, hitting Yugo under his chin and lifting the taller boy off his feet. Both hands on his staff, Naruto attempted a downward strike, but Yugo's recovery was too fast, and he caught it as he glared menacingly at Naruto. Unbothered by the intercepted strike, Naruto detached half of his staff and hit Yugo on the outside of his knee, his stomach, inside elbow, and finished with a strike across the jaw. Yugo dropped the other half of the staff as he fell to the ground. His transformation dropped. Kidamaru shouted and Orochimaru understood his archer's shock. Naruto, seeing his chakra network disruption seal's work, dropped his stick and blurred through a chain of hand signs. The wind-style, wind bullets hit true and not only tore through Yugo but pushed him back toward Kin. Any further action against Yugo was halted as Naruto somersaulted away from an impending arrow. Naruto retaliated with a projectile of his own as he jumped toward Kidamaru. Swiftly, the archer felt the oddest feeling as he was yanked closer to the Uzumaki, Naruto taking the opening to throw several Sanban at his spider-themed nemesis. Each hit true but missed any vital point. Soon the secondary reaction of the clap-axe seal happened and both were flung away from each other, just in time for the Sanban to explode. Naruto managed to land on a tree trunk feet first. Crack! A cacophony of pain described Naruto's reality, as he fell haplessly to the ground. Soon he left the ground not by his own power, as another fist made its home in his gut, forcing blood from his mouth, and he was batted away with ease. Concussed and hurting, a poorly performed shunshin to an elevated branch gave him the briefest respite. He saw the boy he assumed dying was now transformed again, and the girl was lying deathly still. Yugo continued his assault. While healed, it was not at full strength, so with the element of surprise gone, Naruto was better able to defend himself. He was still absorbing blows, still on the back foot as the fogginess had yet to truly fade. "We're clear," Naruto heard and gritted his teeth. He couldn't waste any more time with underlings. He jumped off a branch, slowly, knowing Yugo would catch him. Naruto accepted the next blow, even as he blocked it, as it rocketed him down to the ground. He landed on all fours but wasted no time performing a series of hand seals. As Yugo landed, he felt himself sink in a mud pit he couldn't extricate himself from. The harder he fought, the more he sank. Naruto, seeing the earth-style swamp of the underworld, ran through more hand signs before inhaling a large amount of air. Fire-style, flame bullet, the Uzumaki thought, having created the large mass of flames that roasted the orange-haired ninja in front of him. The fire soon died. The only evidence of its existence being the scorched earth, trees, and ninja left behind. The boy wasn't dead but severely burned, clothing and hair all gone. Naruto wouldn't take a chance, however, of the boy healing again. He walked calmly toward him, chakra scalpel activated on a single hand. One swipe is all it took, and whatever time Yugo had with living was put to an end. Naruto took some deep breaths. He was healing without aid of medical ninjutsu, and he hoped it would be enough. The truly hard part was about to begin. Naruto looked up when he heard a series of claps. His primary target was smiling down at him. Naruto wondered if it was just an act or if the man was actually amused several of his ninja had been killed. He didn't understand how a student of Hisaji-san could be so wrong. He cut off his thoughts when the man began to speak. "How does it feel, Naruto-kun?" Naruto squinted at the man, not understanding why he'd asked such a thing. "You don't know? Okay, what's your process? Why did you target Dosokun first? Which of your works would you consider to be your best to date?" Naruto was growing increasingly confused by these questions. "My best works? I'm not an artist." It was unlike him to banter with an enemy, but even cleared of the bare minimum distance. Giving Gamashiro and Shira more time wouldn't hurt. "Anything can be art, Naruto-kun. You paint with ink and blood much like Minato-kun. So tell me, how do you feel about killing these 9 individuals?" "It was necessary," Naruto answered. "That's not an emotion. I felt it was necessary." "Kukuku, so there is some wit under that ice. That's a start. It seems getting you to truly enjoy your gift will be the hardest part of our time together. Life will be incredibly dull without some emotional content, Naruto-kun." Naruto, having had enough of the weird man's games, got down to business. He retrieved a sealing tag from his vest and spoke to the Sannin. "Orochimaru, formerly of the Densetsu no Sannin and Jounin of Konoha, you are wanted for high crimes and are to submit yourself to my custody." "Oh, and if I don't?" Orochimaru said as he took great amusement from Naruto-kun's spiel. "Refusal to cooperate will result in death." Far from being offended, Orochimaru appreciated his future student's moxie. It figured he needed to demonstrate why he was the master and Naruto-kun the apprentice. It'd also give him a chance to beat some of the willfulness out of him, at least as it applied to the Sannin. He smiled widely as he said, "Then I refuse." Naruto bit his thumb and smeared blood on the tag. 5 hand signs later, and Orochimaru watched as he was surrounded by hundreds, if not thousands, of paper tags containing arrays he'd never seen. The tags seemed to form a barrier, as even above him they formed a dome. He briefly thought this might be more interesting than he thought. Naruto panted just a little. His paper barrier, Shinigami's embrace, was quite chakra-intensive, but it was necessary. The Uzumaki stood to his full height as the paper tags circled. He rose his open hand to the air, and then made a fist. As if summoned to him, Orochimaru felt several tags nearly adhere to his skin, resulting in an explosion. "No blood, just wood," informed Naruto the Sannin had managed to replace himself. He saw the Sannin return, atop another tree, but he didn't seem so amused now. Orochimaru was busy trying to decipher how those tags got to him so fast. He couldn't understand the technique, but he also couldn't endure it in order to do so. It seemed the Uzumaki was truly intent on ending his life. He still had no issue with it. He'd show his student what a death match truly looked like, and why he had years before he could hope to defeat someone of the Snake Sannin's caliber. Naruto rose his hand again. Orochimaru started performing hand signs and an explosion was heard. The gentleman pervert versus the legendary traitor was about to begin. Chapter 18. Orochimaru didn't have time to see if his jutsu connected. As soon as his feet touched ground, he was surrounded by more exploding tags. A swift replacement saved him as the explosion shook the trees down to their roots. His genius mind was occupied with dissecting the jutsu. Every technique had a flaw or a limitation, something that could be exploited. As more explosive tags appeared around him, he devised a test while avoiding the next volley of explosions. A mud clone was sent in an opposite direction, and just as he expected, tags appeared around the both of them. The tags could track him by chakra signature, he concluded as he replaced himself with a log, the bombs rendering it to splinters. The Sannin kept moving. The blasts were powerful but avoidable as well, the blast radius of 3.5 to 4 meters. Those were some of the strengths, but he knew he'd have to press things to discover a weakness, though he suspected there was an obvious one to exploit. He found Naruto and made a beeline for his future student at a moderate, for him, pace. The tags continued to attempt to surround him, but he outsped them. Good, he thought, he had the timing down. He noticed they stopped once he was within the blast radius of Naruto. The tags lazily surrounded the two ninja, and it was as he suspected, the Uzumaki left a safe zone for himself. It was smart but exploitable. Orochimaru would soon discover he was wrong, as only a brief glow alerted him, prompting an instinctual shunshin away as the tags detonated, the radius twice what it was previously. The Sannin could smell the scorched earth and feel the heat of the explosion, but didn't see Naruto. He had no time to ponder his whereabouts, as he ably dodged a staff strike. Shadow clone, Orochimaru suspected. Not just the one he was fighting but the one in the explosion, and Orochimaru reasoned the barrier had a way to distinguish between the real him and clones. With practiced ease, he dodged the attacks of the clone, keeping an eye out for any tags. When none appeared, he rethought his earlier assumption about this being a clone. He smiled at the confidence of the boy, thinking he could attack a shinobi of Orochimaru's caliber with a neat trick and a stick. He moved right as he felt the ground tremor, not missing a step as it broke apart, leaving deep crevices in its wake. The barrage of subterranean wind bullets was child's play to evade. Decent attempts, good enough to get a chunin, but the tactics were a mere trifle for the Sannin. At a speed he assumed the Uzumaki couldn't track, Orochimaru appeared before his target, fist barreling toward him. But even as he attacked, he noticed the paper tags, further away than they had been, glowing. His fist connected and a puff of smoke was the result. Not a moment later a significantly larger explosion occurred, destroying even more of the notorious forest. When the smoke cleared, the Sannin rose from the ground, having had just enough time to sink beneath it for shelter. He now had even more information as it appeared the proximity of the tags affected the area of effect or blast radius. He still assumed the tags would not detonate near the real Naruto, but the boy was clearly proficient with the shadow clone jutsu, so overcommitting to an attack would be foolish and detrimental to his health. Kukuku, he laughed internally. The barrier was not just destructive but an effective method of psychological warfare. Move wrong and you get blown up. Pursue the wrong Naruto and get blown up, but stay still and you get blown up. It encouraged paralysis by analysis. By appearing to have no good options, the victim would be stuck. It was very snake-like and Orochimaru could appreciate it, but he needed to find the real Naruto. Before another trap could appear, Orochimaru got prone and opened his mouth wide, unleashing thousands upon thousands of snake summons. The formation of 10,000 snakes was true to its name as the serpents flooded the area. Orochimaru moved as well, not wanting more tags to appear, but he kept his senses sharp. It didn't take long for the tags to encircle the snakes in sections, dealing death by the hundreds. But Orochimaru noticed that some were managing to avoid their demise in one particular place. He sped over, performing the hand signs for the wind style, great breakthrough, sending the concentrated gust of wind to the area. He smiled when his target's cloaking jutsu dropped as he was hurled through the air. The downside was, as Naruto was moving, the barrier targeted the rest of his snakes, incinerating them, but the summons had fulfilled their purpose. Unwilling to allow him to hide again, Orochimaru extended his tongue. It wrapped around Naruto's ankle and slammed the boy down on the ground, hard enough to crack the forest floor. Giving him no chance to recover, Orochimaru lifted the Uzumaki with a kick to the ribs, mercilessly punching the midair genin in the face hard enough to fling him back. He whipped his tongue out again, planning to give Naruto no respite and no distance. His technique backfired when Naruto's chakra scalpel sliced through his tongue, causing his hold to drop and for the Uzumaki to charge toward him, staff in hand. Orochimaru dipped and dodged as the two engaged in acrobatics, the younger combatant unable to match the more experienced man. There is promise here, Sensei trained him well, Orochimaru thought. He had no love for the staff but could see how the boy could, even for a brief period, match Kimimaro. Flipping over a leg strike, transitioning into a duck and corkscrewing over a third attack, Orochimaru called forth the Kusanagi. Pulling it from his mouth and performing a slash in a single motion, Naruto blocked the attack but was nearly taken off his feet due to the power of the blow. It was Orochimaru's turn to be on the offensive. Gradually increasing the speed with each strike, he forced Naruto to go from blocks to evasions, but he was receiving cuts in the process. The Sannin was picking the Uzumaki apart as more and more cuts started to emerge. Not satisfied with mere nicks, Orochimaru thrust his blade at Naruto's left clavicle but was shocked when the Uzumaki's protective vest didn't allow the sword to penetrate. Taking advantage of his small window, Naruto hit the sword upward, splitting the staff into a scream of sticks as he did. He quickly hit Orochimaru's wrist, the shock of the chakra disruption seal causing the Sannin to drop his legendary weapon, but Naruto was not done. 2 hits, one to the knee and the other to the ribs, kept the Sannin stunned. Naruto flowed into a jab, activating the high-powered shock seal at the end of the stick. Orochimaru was treated to thousands of volts of electricity before being impaled by a Rasengan, or that had been the plan. Defying modern medicine, the Sannin powered through the electric shock and grabbed Naruto's wrist before the pinnacle of shape manipulation could hit him. Tossing the jutsu-wielding arm to the side, Orochimaru hit Naruto with a back fist, drawing blood from his nose. With the same hand, he nailed the genin with a cross that sent him skidding across the ground, only being stopped by a tree, but even it groaned at the force of the contact. Orochimaru was on top of the boy as soon as he saw him pull out two of the same type of bead that froze Suigetsu. He had a wrist in each hand, squeezing hard enough to crack bone. Soon, the pain became too much as the Uzumaki tossed each bead to either side of the two, but not content to have his arms pulverized, he jumped and performed a dropkick, forcing Orochimaru to release him. The Sannin was set on attacking once more but stopped when he saw the Uzumaki close his hand in a similar fashion to when he first created the barrier, and instantly a line of tags appeared between them. Orochimaru had no time to react as both absorbed the blast. By any objective viewing, Naruto's last attack netted him, at best, a Pyrrhic victory. His flak vest had been pushed past its limit, giving into the blast. Naruto had burns across his chest and soft tissue damage. Some tree shards got him as well, a large one in his right arm. His ears were ringing and he could hear nothing over it. Not only was moving near impossible due to the explosion, but, he figured, Orochimaru's sword was coated with a poison that his natural healing factor must have delayed the effects until now. As he catalogued his injuries, Naruto activated his projection seal. 50% complete, nothing can stop it now. Primary objectives: rescue Anko, complete. Neutralize Orochimaru, complete. Secondary objectives: suppress spread of heritage, still in process. Just as Naruto activated his communicator seal, he felt a foot press into him. The pressure was tremendous, the Sannin nearly breaking his ribs with just a step. Kukuku, that was an excellent display, Naruto-kun. Your potential is vast and together we will do great things, Orochimaru said. He was shocked the Uzumaki had forced him to use his special kind of replacement to heal from the damage of the explosion, but there were no more tricks, no more tactics or stratagems. This was it. He leaned down to grab his new student but couldn't know he was incorrect. Naruto had one last trick as the boy disappeared without a trace. Orochimaru didn't have time to yell in frustration, the glow of every tag of the barrier simultaneously alerting him to danger. Quickly he summoned the largest, Namanda, snake he could and hopped inside. But not even the massive snake could absorb the bomb. The impact was so great, it gave off a brilliant white light, shook the entire forest and destroyed everything in its wake. Even Orochimaru was missing his lower body and an arm. Maimed and grotesque, Orochimaru pulled himself from the charred remains of his summons, appearing to be on death's door. Unfortunately, he was able to perform his replacement jutsu, and as he slithered once more, the snake Sannin was perfectly healed again. He was, however, livid. It was one thing to have a willful prey, but to be deprived of what he wanted, almost nothing angered the Sannin more. Worse still, if Naruto hadn't alerted any, that blast certainly had to. The Sannin was left with a decision, none of them good. He could retreat now, but making a future attempt to grab Naruto would be extremely difficult. The Akatsuki were already moving on his bases, so he'd have to go underground to avoid them. There was also no way his sensei would let Naruto out of the village with anyone other than Jiraiya, and for how very little respect he had for Toad, his former teammate was powerful. Naruto-kun and him working together would be too much for the snake's summoner. His best bet was to make another attempt in the forest. Decision made, Orochimaru was set to track the Uzumaki but was stalled by a new sensation. A burning in his chakra core. Like blades of lava that had impaled him. He couldn't move. While his core was molten, the rest of him felt so cold. His muscles were cramping, his chakra was running haywire. The lava blades seemed to increase in heat, creating an unbearable pressure in his torso. He felt like he was going to explode. Instead, he was lifted off the ground as the pressure was alleviated by the emergence of several black chakra chains, each attached to a midair seal. The Sannin was in agony and confused as to what, when and how. What was this seal? When had it been placed upon him? How did it work? He may not have ever gotten to know what it was or when it was placed on him, but he soon got an inkling of how it worked, and for the first time in years, the Sannin was afraid. As each black chain dissolved, Orochimaru felt different. The pain subsided, but he was too smart to take that as a good sign. Not until he got vague memories not of Tayuya and Kimimaro, but from them did he realize what was happening. The pieces of himself he left in the curse seals, they were being pulled back into him. He only got memories from 2 as they were the only active users, the rest kept in reserve and sedated just in case. It meant that for the first time in a long time, he was mortal. He watched in silent horror as the last chain dissolved and felt a twisting of chakra on his neck. He fell to the ground in a heap. He still couldn't move, his chakra flow was too erratic to even attempt to control. He could only sit seiza, head bowed. To complete his humiliation, this submissive position was how Hiruzen and Danzo found him. He couldn't see them but he could sense them. "Where is Naruto-kun?" his sensei asked, doing a poor attempt at hiding his fury. "I gobbled him up, Sarutobi-sensei," Orochimaru joked. He could not have been in a more vulnerable position, but he never cowered to a leaf ninja. If possible, Hiruzen felt his anger spike. Not seeing Naruto amongst the devastation was too inconclusive to be comforting or worrying. He needed to find his grandson, and even with several ANBU on the case it was near impossible to not panic. "That means you don't know, so I have no use for you," Hiruzen said, and then started a sequence of hand signs, only to be stopped by Danzo. Not even his murderous glare backed off the former head of Root. "Your former student is a treasure trove of useful information. He is worth more alive, Hiruzen. I made the mistake of sparing him once, I won't do it again." He thought Danzo had lost the best part of his mind. Sparing Orochimaru was one of the biggest mistakes of his life, he wouldn't do it again. "Then you weaken the village once more," Danzo growled. He had no time to hold Hiruzen's hand over the matter. There was no one more entrenched in the true darkness of the shinobi nations like Orochimaru, and the man had much needed intel. "Act like the Hokage and not a grandfather." The two aged shinobi stared at each other, a lengthy discussion happening with just a look, but Danzo would win the day. "Fine," Hiruzen relented. "You have one change to prolong your life, Orochimaru. Stall, misdirect, or lie and I will burn you alive." Hiruzen warned, then nodded to the bird-masked ANBU, and the man knocked the Sannin out with the handle on his tanto. He along with Boar shunshined away as Nico approached the Hokage. "No, Naruto, Hokage-sama, but I did retrieve this," she said, holding the Kusanagi. "What would you like me to do with it?" "Well, Nico-chan, you wanted something to teach Naruto, and it appears he has quite the spoil. When we find him he goes into protective custody, which you will head," Hiruzen answered. The purple-haired ANBU nodded and was set to depart before she heard a voice over the communicator seal. "Tiger found him, Hokage-sama. He's with Anko and 2 summons. Lead the way, Nico," Hiruzen ordered, and the trio departed with due haste. "What the shit?" Anko exclaimed and then winced. Her sensei had worked her over pretty thoroughly, and even with the Gaki healing her, she was still experiencing some discomfort. Her shout could be understood though, as she just watched a dome of paper tags appear from nowhere. "You must remain still, Anko-chan," Clone Gaki lightly admonished as he tended to the slight fracture in her leg. Yeah, but can you tell me what that is?" she asked as she pointed to the barrier. "A sign that all is going according to plan," was all the clone would say, even as she gave him her best pout. Anko got increasingly worried as she heard the sound of explosions. It reached a new level once the explosions ceased. However, it was the sight of a badly burned, bleeding and beaten Naruto suddenly appearing by the clone that made her heart stop. The clone stopped working on her, having already seen to the most significant injuries, and turned the real Naruto away from her. She heard more than saw the blonde vomit briefly. And if that weren't enough, felt the forest floor shake and felt a wave of heat from a massive explosion. The clone, ignoring the final effects of the paper barrier, retrieved a water bottle and cleaned off the original, while another clone, one that had been guarding the perimeter, used an earth jutsu to bury the sick. The 2 clones then got to work on healing the original, which left Anko confused. If the original was unconscious, as he appeared to be, then why hadn't they dispelled? She didn't ask, however, as she didn't want to distract them. She winced as she got to her feet, pulling a kunai. The 2 toads, also weapons ready, joined her. All 3 had felt someone approaching, and none dropped their guard when they saw it was an ANBU, especially not after Anko had been tricked before. The agent signed a secret code to Anko, but even that didn't allow her to drop her guard. The ANBU didn't move any closer and simply waited. Moments later, the Sandaime arrived, and Anko felt the deepest sense of relief at having her leader present. "Stand down, Anko-chan," the Hokage ordered in a light tone, it was decidedly unrepresentative of his current emotional state. "And you too may dispel. Please give my regards to Gamabunta," the Hokage said, acknowledging the summons. "Sorry, we leave when we run out of chakra or our summoner requests it," Gamashiro said. He meant no disrespect, but the Hokage had no authority over them. The Hokage nodded. "You too can return home, thank you for your aid," one of the clones said, but never took his eyes off his work, repairing the damage of his duel with Orochimaru. "Of course, kid, just remember that Gamabunta-sama is going to want a word," Gamashiro said before she and her brother departed. "Naruto-kun, is the original okay to move?" Hiruzen asked. It hurt seeing his grandson in such a state. His turmoil was multiplied by it being due to the traitor Hiruzen had allowed to flee, having been soft-hearted when he should have been firm. "I can place some stability seals on him so nothing will jostle during transport, and then he can be carried," the clone answered. "Do that and then send a message to the rest of your clones to dispel. I'm sorry to say, but your participation in the exams ends now. It would be inadvisable for my clones to dispel now," the clone cautioned as he applied the stability seals via chakra. "While this is necessary, why do you think it is inadvisable, Naruto-kun?" Orochimaru gave every team a scroll that stated, "I am the son of Minato Namikaze. The clones are preventing the intel from leaving the forest." Hiruzen was dismayed. Not only at the long-buried secret getting out, but the burden his grandson took upon himself. "It's fine, Naruto-kun. It is long past time for you to be openly acknowledged for who you are. Dispel them and get ready to travel." The clone obeyed, and while in pain, it was Anko who picked the blonde up. Tiger shunshed away with the shadow clones. "He's so small, Hokage-sama," Anko said. She knew he was short, but after the removal of the curse seal and the few times they got to hang out, it's like she forgot. Forgot he was 12, a boy. A boy that saved her. Freed her. She was as thankful as she was guilty that a boy half her age came to her rescue because she could do nothing against her traitorous sensei. The Hokage could understand her response, as it was hard to not see the small boy he met over a campfire and regaled with legends about the stars as they ate grilled fish. "We must leave for the tower, Anko-chan. There is much to be done. When you go after my sensei, I want in. I don't care what it takes, I'll kill him," she promised, but felt deflated when the Hokage shook his head. "I'm afraid that won't be possible, my dear. The boy you hold in your very arms did something this old man could not. Orochimaru is in custody, defeated by a genin. Now, to the tower," he said, and she obeyed, even in shock at the news. It couldn't overwhelm her discipline. Besides, there would be time to process everything later. When Hiruzen arrived at the tower, all alerted Konoha ninja were at the ready, as they understood their leader would suffer no fools. Anko was right behind him, heading toward the medical center. Danzo had arrived before Hiruzen and was waiting with Kakashi, the copy ninja, having not been told anything but his presence was needed. Standing at attention in the makeshift office when Hiruzen entered, Kakashi was quickly becoming concerned about what could have prompted Danzo to summon him on behalf of the Hokage. "Kakashi, I won't mince words with you. Orochimaru infiltrated the exam and revealed Naruto-kun's heritage to each participating team. All 4 Jounin will be dead within the hour, Hokage-sama," Kakashi said with a nice smile and then turned to leave. "Stop, Kakashi. The order I gave you on October 11th, nearly 13 years ago, is rescinded. The world will know of Minato and Kushina's son. I did not summon you for that. Forgive my presumption, Hokage-sama," Kakashi apologized. Hiruzen waved him off. "It's fine. The reason I brought you here is that Orochimaru was not just content with spreading the information about Naruto, he abducted Anko and challenged Naruto to retrieve her." "No," Kakashi said. He knew his chibi, knew he'd march right into a trap because Hatake-sensei told him to not do so would make him less than trash. Is he okay?" "He is injured, I will not lie to you. It was bad, but he will survive. More importantly, Kakashi, he won." "I'm sorry," Kakashi said, not understanding the Hokage. "He defeated my student. I haven't debriefed him yet, he's in the medical center, but Orochimaru is heavily sedated in ANBU lockup thanks to your student. I want you guarding him until your other students arrive, but mention nothing of what has happened. You believe Orochimaru had help?" "Yes. Now, I believe much will be revealed in short order, but for now, watch over Naruto-kun, and if anything arouses your suspicion, kill whoever has done so. Type 1 errors are permitted," the Hokage advised grimly, and Kakashi departed without a word, recalling the last time the Hokage said those words. It was in protection of Naruto that time, as well. A few hours passed and Hiruzen's belief proved true, much was revealed. The Chunin proctors, according to the several Yamanaka that scanned them, all had several hours missing. Inoichi said it was not a defensive measure but a sign of a deep hypnosis. While Hiruzen wouldn't discount the possibility of Orochimaru having such a technique, it was also possible he'd had aid from a third party as a pair of gate guards had similar symptoms. When Hiruzen finally debriefed the shadow clone of Naruto-kun, he was both proud and dismayed at the boy's trial within the forest. He praised the clone for managing to save Anko and subdue Orochimaru but criticized him for not waiting, especially as the clone admitted the original thought it was a trap and Anko was already dead. Still, the pride won out and he couldn't be too hard on his grandson. Minato had left the village without permission, tracked and defeated 3 Kumo Jounin to save Kushina. The son took after the father in more ways than one. He was now sitting across from Baki. The Suna Jounin's team had arrived much earlier than any other team. The next closest was Team 8, and that was only recently. Hiruzen had a neutral look on his face, and could see Baki was attempting to appear neutral himself, but the Hokage's aged eyes could see the stress and trepidation in the man's body language. Normally, he'd be the cat to the outmatched Jounin's mouse, but he was in no mood. His chakra was unsettled, mimicking his true feelings. It felt that even his very blood demanded a sacrifice to his rage, for someone or ones to be fed to his righteous fire for daring to harm his grandson. But he'd remain calm for now. Calm is what his position demanded of him. Calm would get results. So, Baki-san, the Hokage started before taking a pause. Tell me why I shouldn't murder your team and you before throwing your corpses in a mass grave? Danzo, who was in the room, just facepalmed knowing his former teammate likely thought he was being calm and collected. He resigned himself to his new position of trying his best to keep Hiruzen from convincing himself all of Suna needed to burn for daring to harm his grandson. He realized that this was likely karmic retribution for all the times he hadn't listened to Hiruzen and had been wrong not to. It was going to be a long night. Chapter 19, Prelims. Point 1. Baki stared at the man known as the God of Shinobi. What response is there to that man asking why he shouldn't kill you and your charges? Bluster may only provoke him to show it wasn't an empty threat. Invoke the law? If he was threatening them, then he clearly didn't care about the ramifications, which meant the Sandaime knew. Knew. Not suspected, not had reason to believe, but knew. And Baki knew he was well and truly fucked. If by some miracle, and Baki had no illusions that it would take the interference of a real deity, he could escape the Sandaime and Danzo both, there would still be Kakashi, Guy, Asuma, and Kurina Yuhi. No need to mention the ANBU that were certainly hiding in the shadows like the kill-happy psychos they were. And speaking of kill-happy psychos, Baki should have known something was categorically wrong when his team arrived. First, he thought nothing of it as they looked pristine and Gaara was reading that accursed orange book. It was Temari that informed him that a black scroll revealing the little, blonde demon was the son of Minato Namikaze. Baki instantly knew that karma was real and the Yondaime had gotten his revenge beyond the grave. The man grimaced at the revelation. He remembered the one and only time he met the yellow flash. It was as Baki was attempting to, unbeknownst to him, chat up said man's girlfriend. In Baki's defense, he'd recently been promoted as the Kazekage's number 2 and was riding high. He saw a beautiful redhead in his village and thought he'd take his chances. She was pleasant enough but didn't seem to be picking up his intent, and Baki soon recognized why when she openly greeted Minato-kun in such a joyous fashion. Baki would never forget those blue eyes. They were devoid of all feeling, of any trace of humanity, as he peered into Baki's very soul. The Suna man tried to make a graceful exit, but before he could, the future Hokage threatened he'd never forget Baki. Never. Baki could still remember how his spine felt exposed to the most frigid air ever created, even as they were in the middle of a desert. Fear. He feared that man and felt no shame in it. I didn't bring you down here to gaze into my eyes longingly, Baki-san. Don't flirt with me, boy, answer my question. Hiruzen ordered, and any additional thoughts on the Yondaime's hellspawn completing his father's revenge would have to wait. You will have to forgive me, Sandaime-sama, but I don't understand why I would be asked such a question. Konoha and Suna are allies in good standing, Baki said as he had nothing else to go on. Danzo frowned at the Suna Jounin's response. That was the exact wrong way to play this, especially with Hiruzen in the current emotional state he was in. He almost wanted to help the man out, if for no other reason than to impart some actual tradecraft into the youngster. Damn kids had no soft skills anymore. Yes, Baki-san, we are allies. That's why I let it slide that you brought your Jinchuuriki into my village without notice. The boy seemed fine enough, a little too taken with Jiraiya-kun's books, but he's a growing lad and I won't begrudge him a healthy interest in the fairer sex. I even ignored your other student following around Naruto-kun. Trying to get information on a competitor is logical, and if he could have gotten anything of value following Naruto, then he deserves a promotion. But what I'm having a hard time with, and the reason you may get intimately acquainted with the soil of Konoha, is Suna working with my trader of a former student. Baki schooled his features, but that he needed to was as much a confession as a genuine reaction would have been. Internally, he was near a total freak-out. His nerves were shot, worn down by the state of his team, by the reveal that Minato had a son and now this. He was trying not to, but his body wouldn't stop tensing, preparing for a fight. He might go, but he wouldn't go quietly. Suna is doing no such thing, and for you to even accuse us of dash. Baki started, making a show of taking offense, but was interrupted by Hiruzen opening a folder. Inside was the dossier of one of the Suna competitors, information foreign villages had to submit to the host for security reasons. But Baki knew this wasn't a true Suna ninja. She was an Oto Kunoichi that was given false Suna credentials to hide the alliance between the two villages. I see you recognize her. She, along with 8 other subordinates and Orochimaru, infiltrated the second exam so my student could set up a trap for Naruto-kun. Of the 10 members involved in that little plot, only 2 survived and none escaped. It was effortless getting Kin to talk. Hiruzen mocked. He hadn't spoken to the girl at all. His ANBU had found her tied up just outside the blast zone of Naruto's barrier. She was suffering severe chakra exhaustion, but they were able to stabilize her enough for a Yamanaka to perform a mind walk. What he learned had only increased Hiruzen's fury. It wasn't hard to put the pieces together, to see the finals of the Chunin exams as a perfect time to stage an attack. It would dishonor Konoha and possibly display Suna's strength. Orochimaru would have gotten to burn things down and possibly, if it were his aim, kill Hiruzen. Even with the mercy he'd shown his student, Orochimaru hated Hiruzen. Your team will continue to participate in the exams, going as far as their talents allow them. Once the second exam is over, you will send word to Raza. He will attend the finals if he wishes to ever see his children again. 2 escorts, Baki? 2, and I wouldn't see this as an opportunity to demonstrate his cleverness. I won't lure my Kage into a trap, Baki said firmly, causing Hiruzen's eyes to thin into slits. It seemed the man thought they were undertaking a negotiation. Your letter or your head, I make no comment on which I prefer, but understand those are the choices before you. Get out of my sight. Hiruzen commanded and Baki obeyed, returning to his team with 2 ANBU as escorts. You need to calm down, Danzo advised. I am calm. Really? Because Baki isn't the only one that thinks you plan to kill Raza once he arrives, consequences be damned. I trust you put together what their plan was, yes? Hiruzen asked, and Danzo looked mildly offended. Of course, I'm not an asshole. Then, should I not want to extract some pain from Suna for daring to betray us? To plot to invade us? None of the Gakage would be so calm about this. I would already have his people mobilized. Danzo answered, making no secret of his true position on Hiruzen's argument. And if I thought the invasion that clearly isn't going to happen was your motivation, I might entertain your argument. It'd be nice to kill a Kage before I depart, just a great item on the resume. But you're acting the same way you behaved when Enzo died. The room turned frigid as the Hokage stared at Danzo, but the man felt no fear. This needed to be said. You were blinded by rage, Hiruzen. You let your students run wild to claim your revenge. So, if you're sitting here saying it isn't in you to do it, then say that. Naruto-kun isn't dead, nor is he my S-, isn't he? Are you really so unaware? It is only your age and respect for Minato's sacrifice that you claim him as a grandson, but I know a father's pride when I see it. Of course I'm proud. Naruto's deficits were directly and indirectly caused by me. He was barely verbal when we first met. He worked hard to overcome them, making the best of what little time I could devote to him. He was and is owed more than I can ever give him, and has turned out fantastically. Minato and Kushina deserve to be here to see his growth, so any excess of pride you see from me is my feeling so on their behalf. He'll be the future of this village, so to correct you, Danzo, if I decide Raza is to die at some point in the future, it would be with the village in mind. Hurting Naruto hurts the village. Now who's being clever? Danzo quipped. Get out. Hiruzen ordered, but there was no heat to the words. I will, but only because I don't want to have to deal with Tsunade when she finds out her student is laid up. You might end up digging that mass grave anyway. Have fun with that, Danzo said as he departed. It was Hiruzen who now facepalmed, thinking of his most volatile student. He could only will the headache away. Hiruzen sat in his ceremonial chair as he watched the start of the preliminary round. 5 days had elapsed and he'd been incredibly busy adjusting to Orochimaru's capture, as the aged shinobi was not satisfied with using a standard cell. He also saw Naruto off before he was taken into protective custody for the duration of the remaining exams. Even with all he'd done, there was still much to do, but for now he had to sit and watch as the next generation took their first steps into becoming the protectors and not the protected, from kings to knights of the Great Tree. Hate had done a serviceable job of explaining the rules, and the first match was to be decided. Ino Yamanaka vs. Kari of Kumo. The screen displayed. The heiress of the Yamanaka clan made her way down to the floor, her back experiencing phantom pains from where her opponent slashed her in the forest of death. She wasn't looking forward to experiencing that again. She tried to shake off an uncharacteristic bout of self-doubt. She never suffered for confidence, but she'd come up short against this Kunoichi, her whole team against the duo from the hidden cloud. Your boyfriend won't be here to protect you this time, Kari said as she walked up to Hate. Ino grimaced. She couldn't disagree. If not for his timely interference, Team 10 may not have survived the forest. 3 clones backed off the 2 from Kumo, Naruto managing to sink 2 shuriken in the side of Omo as he was attacking Choji. It was a revelation to the heiress, as she'd never seen Naruto in mission mode, so to witness him so focused and cold was quite the departure from the sweet, awkward boy she'd come to befriend. A glancing, traitorous thought also noticed he looked cute in all black and backing down enemy ninja. Ino didn't bother to respond to Kari's insult, more focused on how jittery her hands felt as they reached to the sheathed blades at her back. One benefit of this rematch: the Kumo Genin's ambush had been so successful she hadn't had time to retrieve her knuckle knives. Whereas she knew Kari was a kenjutsu user with knowledge of at least one right unjutsu. Are the combatants ready? Hade asked. The 2 girls, now just a few meters apart, both nodded. Fight! A clang was heard through the spacious room as Ino deflected Kari's downward slash. She rotated away from the blade, hoping to find an opening. She hadn't had a lot of time with her knives, but Asuma-sensei drilled her on the basics. Constant motion, in and out, never overcommitting. Hers was not a style built on power, at least not yet. Kari must have read her intention as she swiftly brought the sword around in a horizontal motion, ensuring Ino couldn't charge in. The Team 10 Kunoichi backed off and the 2 ninja reset. Kari went on the offensive again, Ino deflecting the sword strikes and moving away, but she'd allowed herself to get predictable. After another defectly, she was shifted into a kick to the ribs as Kari had accurately guessed her escape route. The Kumo swordswoman followed up with a right cross strong enough to send Ino stumbling back, until she completely lost her footing and fell. Kari stuck her sword in the ground and performed a series of hand signs before pointing her glowing hand toward Ino. The electromagnetic murder jutsu hit true, but Kari was too slow to realize she'd made contact with the substitution log. Slow enough for Ino to deliver 2 cuts to the back of Kari's legs, 1 each. Kari tried to spin kick Ino, but the Yamanaka was moving in the same direction and dug in a body blow before she backed away. With the proper form and her knuckle knives, she knew the punch hurt. She could see Kari fighting the urge to cover her ribs. Angered that the Konoha princess managed to actually wound her, Kari retrieved her sword and began a furious attack. The sound of metal on metal echoed throughout, either fighter willing to back down. But it was clear to every senior ninja, Ino was faring well, but unless she came up with a plan, she'd lose to her technically superior opponent. As if they willed it, Ino blocked another downward strike but misjudged the distance. Kari being much closer than times previous, Ino was closer to the hilt. For the first time in their fight, Kari's blade tasted blood. Ino bit her lip in response. It wasn't an incredibly deep cut, but it wasn't shallow either. Her purple attire was staining itself with her life essence. A shoulder wound was limiting and painful. If she didn't end this soon, the blood loss may start to affect her. Sacrificing some of her defensive power, Ino used one of her knives to nick the back of Kari's hand. Ino ducked, feeling the sword leave her body, and hit Kari with a short uppercut that snapped the red-haired Kunoichi's head back. As she circled away, Ino finished her assault with a leg kick to the back of Kari's knee. Knowing her enemy was behind her, Kari deftly performed a backward stab. It hit nothing, but it allowed her to shift away from Ino and get back to her feet. She wouldn't broadcast it, would do her best to never let anyone know, but her legs were feeling more and more numb, and that the hand that had been cut was starting to feel it as well let her conclude that the knives were poisoned with, she hoped, a paralytic. Karui was in an undesirable position. She didn't want to waste chakra. The proctor had explained that 3 of the participants would have to fight twice, and she didn't want to risk depleting herself should she be called again. But she couldn't continue taking damage. She needed to end this and receive treatment. The brash kunoichi settled on a blitz, a final, all-out assault to make the girl in front of her crumble. She sent chakra to her limbs, hoping the minor enhancement would be enough, and dashed toward Ino. If the previous exchanges had been intense, this felt murderously rabid to Ino. Karui had committed to an onslaught of fast and powerful strikes. Not as technical as she had been, but this was almost worse. Ino was being pushed back, barely defending, but even the defense was taking a toll. She was getting tired, worn down, and would be open for an unguarded attack soon. She had one more ace up her sleeve, but like almost everything else she hadn't mastered it, so was reluctant to use it. However, the situation demanded she either gamble or concede. She chose to gamble. First, she switched her tactics from deflecting the sword to dodging and evading it. The only reason she could manage it now, instead of when Karui was fresh, was Ino could see her poison had started to work. The attack was frenzied, but Karui was ever so slightly slowing down. Ino used it to get in close, arms pulled toward her chest as she did so. Karui, taken off guard, lashed out with another right cross. It hit Ino square in the jaw, but as it was in motion she ran her blade along the inside of Karui's forearm. The heiress hit the ground with a thud, and it confused all that Karui didn't follow up. I quit, I need help! The Kumo Kunoichi shouted in mortal terror. Hade was shocked but called the fight just as Ino got to her feet. I need a medic, I don't have much time! She screamed, not understanding why no one was coming to her aid, not even Samui. She put pressure on her arm trying to buy her precious moments, and was so relieved when a medic appeared beside her, and then whisked her off. Another medic doing the same for Ino. Hade performed a simple water jutsu to clean up the blood as the next 2 names were selected. Gaara of Suna versus Seiki of Kusagara arrived on the floor, eyes having never left his book. He was getting to a good part, and didn't have any interest in fighting some child. Forfeit or die. He warned his fellow genin but tuned the boy out when he didn't hear some version of, I quit. The sickly proctor called a start to the fight, and Gaara felt his sand intercept something. Probably a kunai, he didn't really care. The main character had finally proven his valor and worth to his first love and was going to get to sample her sweet, sweet fruit. You could at least fight back, coward! The boy yelled. Gaara rolled his eyes in annoyance. He'd warned the fool, hadn't he? All of this was utterly pointless. Gaara willed all of his sand back in his gourd, all but a single grain. It floated peacefully on his index finger until he made a swiping motion toward his opponent. The projectile entered the Kusa genin's brain before he could even consider moving. Gaara was back with his siblings before the body hit the ground. How unyouthful! Gaara heard someone shout. He didn't bother to respond. Age was an illusion that gave false value to life. Fast or slow, death was simply the end of a meaningless existence. The Uzumaki showed him that, had given Gaara the gift of nothingness. Gaara longed to repay the Uzumaki by ending his life. After another pause to clean the arena floor, 2 more names were displayed, Kiba Inuzuka versus Sakura Haruno. Yeah, finals, here I come! Kiba exclaimed as he dashed downstairs, eager to get this over with. While offended, Sakura understood why Kiba was so confident, as the academy version of her would be a total gimme fight for the Inuzuka. Even before her time in the Forest of Death she would have assumed she was overmatched. The pink-haired kunoichi had such a low opinion of her abilities because she was continually comparing herself to her team and her disastrous missions. It wasn't until she faced off with normal genin did the Haruno realize she wasn't as weak as she thought she was. Sasuke was a genius and obsessed with training to reach his goal of killing a certain person. She didn't have his drive, certainly hadn't had it at the tender age of 8. Kakashi was the Konoha jounin, and while he could come off lazy, she'd seen what he could do when he turned it on, so of course she couldn't compare herself to him. And Naruto, well, she didn't really understand Naruto even after having trained with him for months. Having Kakashi-sensei inform Sasuke-kun and her that Naruto survived his face-off with Orochimaru, though the pride in Kakashi's eye led her to believe he did a little more than survive the encounter, made her conclude that Naruto was just different. She wasn't weak, just weaker than the trio of monsters she'd been teamed with, and felt no shame in it. It was simply a goal to reach. She'd close the gap by hook or by crook. It was why she understood Kiba's confidence, but she still planned to kick his ass. Both fighters got in their stances, Sakura making sure to stay light on her feet, and waited. "Fight!" Hake yelled, and Kiba dashed toward Sakura, a feral swing aiming to knock her out in one blow. He was fast, faster than the Team 7 Kunoichi, but not fast enough to completely overwhelm her. Sakura timed the strike, as she slid back just out of range while grabbing Kiba's wrist and pulling him forward. Out of position and defenseless, Sakura slugged him with an overhand right, landing on the Inuzuka's jaw. On instinct, Kiba spun through the blow and kicked Sakura in the gut, forcing her off her feet as he rolled away. Kiba tried to fix the swimming feeling in his head by shaking it repeatedly. The fangirl was much stronger than he'd expected, and while rash, he wasn't stupid. He couldn't treat her like a scrub. Finally clear, Kiba rushed at Sakura again, but this time with a plan. As he entered striking range, he circled to her left and sidekicked Sakura on her hip. Stunned from the quick change of direction and power of the blow, Sakura absorbed a follow-up kick as Kiba's shin met her neck. The pinkette was in a world of pain and couldn't think, forcing her to act solely on instinct. This surprised Kiba, as he expected her to either curl up from his attacks or try to create distance, which was why he was attempting to close the distance before she could retreat. Sakura opted to get closer and throw a pair of short uppercuts. The first was off the mark. It landed but under the jawbone near Kiba's left ear. The second one was right on, landing under his chin. Once again Kiba was startled and dazed by Sakura's power, but sobered up immediately when he felt her clinch the back of his head. Clinching was something Hinata did, so he knew how bad the position could be and how to get out of it. He dropped low, dug his shoulder into her stomach as he grabbed her legs and took her down, mounting her in one smooth motion. "Ah, fuck!" Kiba yelled, denied the chance to enjoy his advantage. Not thinking, he went to reach for the kunai stabbed into his leg, not paying attention to Sakura at all. For his momentary lapse, he was awarded a meeting of his head to the floor as Sakura reached up and pulled him down. The thud could be heard by all in attendance. Sakura pushed Kiba off her and returned to her feet, gearing up to kick the potentially concussed boy in the head to end this, but Sakura had her own oversight to pay for. "Uff!" she gasped as Akamaru dove into the girl, his head buried in her gut with enough force to lift her off her feet. The little dog barked in warning. "Good job, buddy," Kiba complimented. He'd torn off part of his sleeve to wrap his leg with, having removed the kunai. It hurt to put pressure on his leg, and he'd be noticeably slower because of it, but he was still confident he could win. "Come here, Akamaru, let's show her why she shouldn't mess with us." Sakura witnessed Kiba give Akamaru a pill, then the appearance of a cloud of smoke before it revealed a perfect replica of Kiba. The two got on all fours, chakra briefly surrounding their bodies. She didn't know why, but performed a substitution jutsu, narrowly avoiding the tsuga. She didn't have time for a repeat, so while attempting to dodge the second passing Fang, Sakura felt her exposed side get shredded. She suffocated a scream as she held her side. Taking stock of her situation, she was outnumbered by a physically superior force, one at her front and the other at her back. She was injured, bleeding, and her mobility was hampered. It wasn't good. The smart play would have been to forfeit, as she'd done more than anyone expected of her. But she couldn't bring herself to do so. Utilizing her intellect, she formed a plan. Sakura dipped her hand in her kunai holster and charged at the Kiba in front of her. This was a desperation play, and if it didn't work, she'd lost anyway, so she'd hold nothing back. Ignoring the agony from her wound, she continued charging, the Kiba behind her slowed due to the shock of her suicidal run toward his copy. The Kiba in front of her, taken by surprise as well, didn't perform another tsuga, opting to just finish her with a single blow. Sakura threw the disc and performed the desired hand sign. The timing had been tight. The Kiba behind her had closed much of the distance between them, but was still far enough away to not be affected, while the one in front of her was within the radius. He didn't know how to react when he was suddenly pulled towards Sakura with no control over his body, but the pinkette did as she unleashed as much force as she could. The full extension of the punch was reached just as Kiba came into range. Perfectly placed. Which is why it was so disappointing when she saw the puff of smoke as she was tossed back. No time to dwell, Sakura turned in midair, the clapback seal essentially providing the entirety of the force for this next move. The real Kiba and she collided in mutual lariats. Each proved to be too much for the other as the genin slumped on the floor in a double knockout. The medics escorted all 3 combatants to the medbay. All had come around before ever leaving the tower hall. Karen of Kusa vs. Niji Hyuga. Karen was unsteady as she walked down the steps. Her time in the forest had been traumatic, if she were being frank. She'd sensed several copies of a chakra signature moving throughout the forest, and everywhere they went other signatures vanished. So, when she felt 3 of them heading toward her team, she was terrified. She wasn't a fighter, she wasn't even really a medic. She was one step above a tool and hated it. Kusa was going to suck her dry like they had her mother. She'd warned her teammates, and they chose to run, of course managing to cross paths with the largest bear in existence. Seiki had gotten wounded by the beast's paw, and she resigned herself to dying and being eaten by a wild animal. Until one of those cloned signatures showed up and knocked the bear out with a staff. She instantly recognized him, Uzumaki Naruto, and her other teammate had as well. The coward actually grabbed her and held a kunai to her throat, threatening to slit her open if he didn't leave. The boy looked confused, as he should have. She wasn't a valuable hostage. They didn't even know each other, but Kuro pressed the knife to her neck hard enough to draw blood. She remembered the boy telling her to make it to the tower, but Kuro thought it a challenge presented to himself. She healed her idiot teammates, and somehow managed to make it, but had no clue why she even bothered. The Hyuga looked menacing? Just short of evil? He clearly had a lot of anger, and she didn't need her abilities to pick that up as she stood across from him. The special Jounin called the fight, and Karen was struck before she could even consider throwing up a guard. She dropped like her strings had been cut, and a small trickle of blood dripped from her mouth. The medics rushed to her but could feel no heartbeat. They tried to revive her there, but their efforts failed, and the head medic called it. Niji walked back to the overlook. He didn't know why Gai-sensei had asked him if he knew how to put someone in a false death state, or why he'd be earning $30,000 Rio and the thanks of the Hokage to do just that, but Niji could use the money and wouldn't turn down the opportunity to impress the Hokage. He quickly looked up to his failure of a cousin as she was watching him intently. She then held her hand out, palm down, and rocked it back and forth. SOSO. She just rated his performance, a flawless execution of precision juken. Okay. Meh. Mediocre. Average. If he thought he'd make it, he'd strike that arrogant brat down where she stood. SOSO. SOSO. The arrogance. Kurenai saw the interaction between cousins and leaned over to Hinata inquiring. Was that wise? No one was more proud of Hinata gaining confidence and letting her real talents flourish, but she didn't want it to become hubris, especially not if it would endanger her. If your enemy is of choleric temper, seek to agitate him. Kurenai just nodded but said no more. All looked to the board to see who the next combatants would be. Temari of Suna vs. Tenten of Konoha. It confused all in attendance when, for vastly different reasons, both girls adopted murderous grins.